Chapter 1. The forest had been trying to warn me all morning. I should have listened. Every instinct I'd honed over 10 years of wildlife photography screamed at me to turn back as I pushed deeper into the Olympic National Forest. The birds had gone silent an hour ago. The underbrush felt wrong. Too still, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. Even the light seemed different here, filtering through the canopy in sickly green shafts that made my skin crawl. But I'd never been good at listening to my instincts. If I had been, I would have demanded answers 3 years ago, when they told me my father died in a hunting accident. I would have questioned why a man who'd spent 30 years in the wilderness suddenly got careless enough to get himself killed. I would have questioned a lot of things. My boots crunched over frost, brittle leaves as I checked my GPS. The coordinates my editor had given me should lead to a wolf den, a pack that had been spotted repeatedly in this area. National Geographic wanted photos for a spread on apex predator recovery in the Pacific Northwest. It was the kind of assignment I'd built my career on: dangerous, isolated, and far away from people. People were complicated. Animals made sense. The clearing appeared without warning. One moment I was pushing through dense hemlock and Douglas fir, and the next I stumbled into an open space that shouldn't exist. The trees had been torn apart. Not cut, but ripped from the earth, their root systems exposed like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. Scorch marks blackened the ground in irregular patterns. And scattered across the clearing, bleached white by 3 years of weather, were bones. So many bones. My camera slipped from my numb fingers, caught only by the strap around my neck. I stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a natural die-off. This wasn't predator kills or a harsh winter. This was something else entirely. This was a massacre. I counted at least 40 skulls visible from where I stood, mixed with rib cages, femurs, scattered vertebrae. But these weren't animal bones. They were too large, too human in shape despite their odd proportions. And among them lay the remnants of clothing. Torn fabric, shattered jewelry, a child's shoe that made my stomach turn. The nightmares I'd been having since my father's death suddenly crashed over me with nauseating clarity. Wolves, blood, screaming. The smell of burning flesh and fur. I'd been dreaming about this place for 3 years without knowing it existed. How was that possible? I should have run. Every survival instinct I possessed was shrieking at me to get away from this cursed clearing, to call the authorities, to forget I'd ever been here. But my photographer's mind had already shifted into documentary mode, cataloging details, reaching for my camera with shaking hands. The bones showed evidence of violent trauma, bite marks, claw gouges, fractures consistent with extreme force. Some had been partially burned. Military-grade weapons casings littered the ground alongside the remains, brass glinting in the filtered sunlight. This wasn't just a massacre. It was a battlefield. I raised my camera, framing a shot of a skull that still had tattered clothing wrapped around it. When every hair on my body suddenly stood on end, I wasn't alone. The presence behind me felt massive, predatory, and utterly focused on me. I could hear breathing, harsh, ragged, barely controlled. Could smell something wild and dangerous, like smoke and pine and fresh blood. My finger froze on the shutter button, my entire body locking up in pure animal terror. You shouldn't be here. The voice was barely human, more growl than words, dragged up from somewhere deep and damaged. I turned slowly, hands raised, and came face to face with a nightmare. The man standing at the edge of the clearing looked like he'd been torn apart and put back together wrong. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with a frame that had once been powerfully built, but now showed signs of severe malnourishment. His clothes were little more than rags, hanging off shoulders that still managed to look threatening despite the obvious starvation. Dark hair hung past his jaw in matted tangles, and a beard obscured most of his face. But it was his eyes that froze the scream in my throat. They were amber, not brown, not hazel, but genuine gold, and they held absolutely no sanity. He stared at me with the fixed intensity of a rabid animal, pupils blown wide, every muscle in his body coiled for violence. Blood stained his hands and forearms, fresh enough to still be wet. This was the man who'd created the bone field. I knew it with absolute certainty. And I was going to die here. Please? My voice came out as a whisper. I'm just a photographer. I didn't see anything. I'll leave right now and never? You're lying? He moved closer, and I could see him trembling, not with fear, but with barely restrained violence. You saw everything. You saw what I did. I don't know what happened here. I took a step back, my heel catching on a branch. I don't know anything about. He moved faster than any human should be able to move, closing the distance between us in a blur. His hand wrapped around my throat, not squeezing, just holding. His palm burning hot against my skin. Up close, I could see the scars that covered every visible inch of him, the feverish heat radiating from his body, the way his eyes flickered between gold and something darker. I should kill you, he whispered, and his voice cracked with something that might have been anguish. That's what's supposed to happen. Witnesses die, that's the law. That's what keeps us safe. Us! What did that mean? But then something impossible happened. As his hand touched my throat, his entire body went still. The trembling stopped. The manic intensity in his eyes dimmed slightly, replaced by confusion. He drew in a sharp breath through his nose, and I watched his pupils contract to something approaching normal. What? He leaned closer, breathing in my scent like it was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. His eyes fell closed for a moment, and when they opened again, there was a clarity in them that was somehow more terrifying than the madness. How is this possible? Please let me go. Tears were streaming down my face now. Please, I have a life. I have people who look for me. No, you don't. His thumb brushed across my pulse point, and I felt him register the racing beat of my heart. I can hear your heart. I know when you're lying. You live alone. No family. No partner. Just you and your camera, and all those walls you've built to keep people out. How could he possibly know that? You're terrified of me, he continued, his voice still rough but increasingly coherent, as if proximity to me was clearing fog from his mind. You should be. I'm a monster. I killed 47 people in this clearing 3 years ago. Tore them apart with my bare hands. Men, women, children. Pack. Witnesses. Us. The words didn't make sense, but my mind was racing, connecting impossible dots. The proportions of the bones, his inhuman speed, those golden eyes. But you... He pressed closer, and I could feel the heat of him all along my body now, could smell the wildness on his skin. You smell like home, like peace, like the answer to a question I've been too insane to ask. His free hand came up to cup my face with surprising gentleness, and where his skin touched mine, I felt something shift inside me, a warmth spreading through my chest, a strange calm descending over my terror. It made no sense. I should be fighting, screaming, doing anything but standing here letting a murderer touch me. But I couldn't move. Couldn't look away from those golden eyes that were simultaneously calculating and desperate. I'm going to give you a choice, he said finally, his voice dropping to something almost sane. Though I'm not sure either of us really has one anymore. What choice? I managed to ask. Come with me willingly. Help me figure out what really happened that night, and I'll let you go when we're done." His hand tightened fractionally on my throat, not threatening, but possessive. "Or run, and my wolf will hunt you down and kill you within a mile. Because now that I've found you, now that I know what you are." "What am I?" His smile was broken and terrible and achingly sad. "You're the only thing standing between me and complete madness. You're my last chance at remembering who I was before I became a monster. You're mine, even if you don't understand it yet." "That's not a choice. That's kidnapping. I know." He released my throat, but immediately caught my wrist, his grip unbreakable. "But you came looking for wolves, photographer. Congratulations. You found one." He started pulling me toward the tree line, away from the massacre site, away from my equipment, away from any hope of rescue. I dug in my heels, tried to wrench free, but it was like fighting a steel cable. "What's your name?" I demanded, some part of me insisting on treating him like a person rather than a monster, even as he dragged me into captivity. He paused, looking back at me with those terrible golden eyes, and for just a moment, I saw something achingly human in them. "Asher," he said quietly. "My name was Asher Thorne, and I'm sorry, but neither of us has a choice anymore." Then he pulled me into the forest, and the trees swallowed us whole. Chapter 2. I tried to memorize the road as Asher dragged me deeper into the wilderness, cataloging landmarks the way I'd been trained to do on remote assignments. The oddly shaped boulder, the stream crossing, the lightning-struck cedar. But he moved too fast, his grip on my wrist never loosening, and within 20 minutes I was hopelessly lost. The forest had become a blur of green and brown, the afternoon sun slanting through the canopy in disorienting patterns. My free hand clutched my camera. He'd let me grab it before leaving the clearing, which seemed like an odd mercy from someone who'd just kidnapped me. "I can't? I need to rest." I stumbled over a root, and only his grip kept me from falling. My legs were burning, my lungs heaving. I was in good shape from years of wilderness photography, but Asher moved like a machine, tireless and relentless. He stopped abruptly, and I crashed into his back. Up close, I could feel the abnormal heat radiating from his body, could see the tension thrumming through every muscle. He was wound so tight I thought he might snap. "We're not far enough yet," he said. But his voice had that fractured quality again, like he was arguing with himself. "They might track us." "Can't let them find you." "Can't?" He trailed off, swaying slightly. His free hand came up to his head, fingers digging into his scalp hard enough that I saw blood. I watched in horrified fascination as he seemed to wage some internal war, his breathing becoming ragged, his entire body beginning to shake. "Asher," I whispered, and the sound of my voice seemed to anchor him. His head snapped toward me, those golden eyes focusing with visible effort. "Say it again." "What?" "My name." "Say my name again." "Asher." I kept my voice soft, like I was trying to calm a spooked animal. "Your name is Asher Thorne." Some of the tension drained from his shoulders. His breathing evened out fractionally. He stared at me like I was some kind of miracle, his expression shifting between wonder and despair. "For 3 years, I haven't been able to think clearly for more than a few minutes at a time," he said quietly. "The wolf takes over. The memories fragment. I lose myself in the rage and the guilt and the blood. But when you're near me, when I can smell you, hear your heartbeat, it's like surfacing after drowning. I don't understand any of this." My voice shook. "Wolves, packs, what you are." "I'm a werewolf." He said it flatly, watching for my reaction. The bones in that clearing belonged to my pack. 47 werewolves slaughtered in a single night. And every single piece of evidence says I was the one who killed them. The rational part of my brain screamed that this was insane, that werewolves didn't exist, that I was being held captive by a delusional murderer. But the rest of me, the part that had photographed animals in the wild for a decade, that understood predator behavior on an instinctive level, recognized truth when I heard it. His eyes, his speed, his inhuman strength and the way my presence affected him. The size and shape of those bones. Werewolves, did you? I heard myself ask. Did you kill them? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. I have fragments, screaming blood, fire, pain. I remember the smell of silver and wolfsbane. I remember waking up covered in their blood with my wolf, so feral I couldn't shift back for 3 days. The territory elders found me, sitting in the middle of the carnage, and the evidence was conclusive. But you don't remember doing it? No. And that's the problem. Because if I didn't kill them, then someone else did. Someone who framed me. Who slaughtered my entire pack and made it look like I'd gone rogue. His eyes bore into mine. And you're going to help me figure out which one is true. Before I could respond, he pulled me forward again. And I had no choice but to follow. The cabin appeared just as the sun was setting, materializing from the gloom like something out of a nightmare. It was small, crude, more hunting shelter than home, built from rough, hewn logs and chinked with moss. A single window, shuttered with rough wood. A door that hung crooked on its hinges. The clearing around it was barely 10 feet wide, hemmed in on all sides by towering evergreens. This was going to be my prison. Asher released my wrist to push open the door, and for half a second, I considered running. But he turned and looked at me with those knowing golden eyes, and I understood that he'd let me go deliberately, testing me. How far would I get? I asked. Not far enough. His voice was almost gentle. I'm sorry. I know this is wrong. I know I'm a monster for doing this to you. But I'm also desperate and barely sane, and you're the first thing that's made sense in 3 years. So I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to keep you here until we figure this out. And if we don't figure it out? His silence was answer enough. I walked into the cabin on my own, and heard the door close behind me with a finality that made my stomach drop. The interior was as primitive as the exterior suggested. A single room, maybe 12 by 12 feet. A crude bed frame in one corner with what looked like animal furs piled on it. A wood stove that had seen better days. A rough table and a single chair. No electricity, no running water, no phone signal. No way out except through him. There's a stream 50 yards east, Asher said from behind me. I'll take you there to wash in the morning. There's dried meat and foraged food. It's not much, but it'll keep you alive. I turned to face him, clutching my camera like a shield. In the dim light filtering through the shuttered window, he looked even more feral. A predator playing at being human. But beneath the wildness, I could see the man he might have been once. The strong bones of his face, the intelligence in his eyes when they weren't clouded by madness. Why me? I asked. Why do I calm you? His laugh was bitter. Because you're my mate. My true mate. The 1 in 7 million chance that a werewolf finds the one person who completes them. Your scent, your presence. It soothes the wolf because you're ours. We're supposed to protect you, cherish you not. He cut himself off, turning away. Not kidnap you and drag you into hell. Mate. The word settled over me like a physical weight, carrying implications I wasn't ready to process. I didn't ask for this, I whispered. Neither did I. He moved to the far corner, putting as much distance between us as the small space allowed. I'm going to chain myself to the support beam tonight. Sometimes the wolf takes over while I sleep, and I won't risk you. There are blankets on the bed. Take them. I don't need them. You're going to chain yourself up? Horror crept into my voice. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure I don't hurt you. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw a depth of self, loathing that made my chest ache. Because if I kill you, if I destroy the one thing that's given me even a moment of peace, then I really will be the monster everyone believes I am. He produced heavy chains from behind the wood stove. They looked medieval, crusted with old blood, and began wrapping them around his wrists with practiced efficiency. The sight of him binding himself, imprisoning himself to protect me from himself, was somehow more disturbing than anything else that had happened today. There's one more thing you need to know, he said, as he secured the chains to the support beam. Other packs are hunting me. They think I'm a mad dog that needs to be put down. If they find me, they'll kill me. If they find you with me, they'll kill you too. You're a witness to a pack massacre now. That makes you a liability to every werewolf alive. The chains rattled as he tested them, and apparently satisfied, he sank down against the wall. Even restrained, he looked dangerous. A caged predator who could break free at any moment if he chose. So my choices are stay with the possibly psychotic werewolf who kidnapped me, or get hunted down by other werewolves if I escape. I heard the edge of hysteria in my laugh. That's not really a choice either. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. I'm sorry. Nora. The use of my name. He must have read it off my camera equipment. Sent a shiver through me. It made this personal in a way I wasn't prepared for. I retreated to the bed, as far from him as the cabin allowed, and wrapped myself in the furs. They smelled like him. Wild and dangerous, and somehow not entirely unpleasant. My body was exhausted, running on adrenaline fumes, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. I'd come into the forest looking for wolves. I'd found something infinitely more dangerous, and the most terrifying part. Some small, irrational piece of me believed him. Believed the pain in his eyes, the self-hatred in his voice, the possibility that he might be innocent of the massacre. That he might be as much a victim as his pack. That I might be the key to proving it. Asher. I called into the darkness. Yeah. Tomorrow, we start investigating. We find out what really happened. Because if you didn't kill them, someone got away with murder. And if you did... I paused, forcing myself to be honest. Then I need to know what kind of monster I'm trapped with. His chains rattled softly in the darkness. Fair enough, he said. Get some sleep, Nora. Tomorrow, we start digging up the past. And I promise you, whatever we find, it's going to be worse than you imagine. I closed my eyes, knowing sleep was impossible, and tried not to think about the fact that I could hear his breathing across the small cabin. Tried not to think about the way my racing heartbeat had calmed slightly since we'd stopped moving. Tried not to think about the warmth spreading through my chest every time he said my name. Tried not to think about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, fate had led me to this clearing for a reason. Outside, wolves howled in the distance, and I dreamed of blood and fire and golden eyes watching me from the darkness. Chapter 3. I woke to the sound of chains rattling in a low, animal growl that raised every hair on my body. Pale dawn light filtered through the shuttered window, painting the cabin interior in shades of gray. I sat up slowly, clutching the furs, and my breath caught in my throat at what I saw. Asher was awake, or something was awake in his body. He strained against the chains, his back arched, muscles standing out in stark relief beneath his tattered shirt. But it was his face that froze me in place. His eyes had gone completely gold, no white visible at all. And his features had shifted subtly, sharper cheekbones, elongated canines visible between parted lips, something fundamentally inhuman in his expression. This was the wolf, and it was focused entirely on me. Asher. My voice came out as a whisper. The thing wearing his face snarled, pulling against the chains hard enough that the support beam creaked. I could see the wood splintering slightly where the metal had been bolted into it. If he broke free, mate. The word was barely recognizable, more animal than human. Close. Need. Mine. Every instinct screamed at me to stay exactly where I was, to not approach the predator straining toward me. But I remembered what he'd said last night, that my presence calmed him, that I was the only thing standing between him and complete madness. I'm here, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. I'm not going anywhere. The wolf thing growled again, frustrated, desperate. The chains groaned. This was insane. I was going to get myself killed. But some part of me, the part that had always understood animals better than people, that had spent a decade photographing apex predators, recognized what I was seeing. Not a monster trying to attack, but a creature in distress, fighting itself, desperate for something it couldn't articulate. I slid off the bed, my bare feet cold against the rough wooden floor, and took one step toward him. Then another. Don't. He managed to force out. And for a moment I saw Asher surface in those golden eyes, terrified, horrified. Not safe. Can't control. I know. I took another step. But you won't hurt me. I don't know how I know that, but I do. It was true. Standing here in my worn jeans and tank top, facing down a half-shifted werewolf who could tear me apart, I should have been paralyzed with terror. And I was afraid, but not of him hurting me. I was afraid of what it meant that I trusted him not to. I reached the edge of his reach, just beyond where the chains would let him grab me, and sank down to sit cross-legged on the floor. At this distance, I could see the fine tremor running through his entire body, could hear his harsh breathing, could smell the wild scent of him mixed with something that might have been fear. Tell me about your pack, I said softly. Who were they? He stared at me, the wolf and the man warring in his eyes. Families. He finally managed, his voice raw. Children, elders. My sister, my beta. People who trusted me to protect them. And you loved them. More than my own life. A shudder ran through him, and I watched the gold in his eyes fade slightly. Sarah was turning 8 the next week. She'd been pestering me for weeks to let her join the youth training. And Marcus, my beta, he'd just found his mate. They were talking about having kids. The chains went slack as his body sagged. The wolf was receding, giving way to the man and all his grief. I failed them all, he whispered. Whether I killed them or couldn't protect them, I failed them all. Without thinking, I reached out and placed my hand on his knee. The first time I'd willingly touched him. His whole body went still, like I'd electrocuted him. Then slowly, carefully, as if I might bolt, his shaking hand covered mine. The effect was immediate. The last of the gold drained from his eyes, replaced by exhausted brown amber. His breathing evened out. The tremor in his muscles calmed. How do you do that? He asked, staring at our joined hands like they were a miracle. I don't know. I should have pulled away. Every rational cell in my body screamed that this was wrong. Touching my kidnapper, comforting the man who might have slaughtered 47 people. But I couldn't bring myself to break the contact. Tell me what you remember about that night. He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb absently stroking across my knuckles. The gesture should have been threatening. Instead, it felt grounding, safe. It was a full moon gathering, he finally said. The whole pack together. We did it monthly. Celebration, pack bonding, teaching the young ones. Everyone was there. Everyone. He closed his eyes, and I could see the effort it took to access memories that had been fragmented by trauma. There was dinner. Laughter. Sarah convinced me to play a stupid game with the kids. Marcus and Alina were dancing. It was perfect. It was home. His voice cracked. Then I remember going to check the perimeter. Standard security sweep. I smelled something wrong, silver, wolfsbane, humans. I called Marcus on the radio, told him to get everyone into the reinforced safe house. That's the last clear memory I have. What's the next thing you remember? Pain. His hand tightened on mine. Burning. Like every nerve in my body was on fire. Wolfsbane in my system. Someone injected me with enough to kill a normal wolf. I remember shifting involuntarily, over and over, my body trying to purge the poison. And then, fragments, screaming, fire, the smell of blood and smoke, my wolf in a rage, out of control. And when I finally came back to myself 3 days later, the clearing. He opened his eyes, and the devastation in them made my chest ache. 47 bodies. My claws covered in their blood. My pack torn apart. And no memory of doing it, but all the evidence pointing at me. I processed this. My photographer's mind organizing the facts. The wolfsbane. That's a poison. Specifically toxic to werewolves. Burns our nervous system, causes involuntary shifts, can send us into a feral rage. In high enough doses, it's lethal. But to get that much into my system, someone had to inject me, which means someone was close enough to do it. Someone you trusted. His expression went dark. That's what I've been trying to remember. Who could get that close to an alpha without me sensing the threat? Who would want my pack dead? We sat in silence for a moment, my hand still resting beneath his. The chains had gone slack. He could have reached me easily now, but he kept his movements slow and controlled, like he was afraid of spooking me. Asher. I said his name carefully, watching his reaction. He went still again, his entire focus narrowing to me. These chains. You don't need them right now, do you? No. Your presence keeps the wolf calm, but at night, or when you're not close enough, or if you leave. He didn't finish the sentence. Then let me help you out of them. Just for now. That's not a good idea? Why? Because you might hurt me? Or because you're afraid of what it means if you don't. His eyes searched mine, and I saw the war in them. Between the urge to keep me safe and the desperate need for something as simple as freedom. If I hurt you, you won't. I shifted closer, reaching for the chains. And if you do, then we'll know. We'll know you really are the monster everyone thinks you are. But I don't think you are. Why? The question was raw, vulnerable. You don't know me. I kidnapped you. I'm holding you prisoner. Why would you believe in me? I met his eyes. Those strange amber, brown eyes that had seen too much horror, and told him the truth. Because I've spent 10 years photographing predators. I know what a killer looks like, and I know what a broken animal looks like. You're not a monster, Asher Thorne. You're just hurt. His breath hitched, and for a moment I thought he might cry. Instead, he held perfectly still as I worked the chains free from his wrists. The metal had rubbed his skin raw, leaving wounds that should have been infected but looked like they were already healing. When the last chain fell away, he stayed frozen, as if afraid to move. Then, slowly, he flexed his fingers, rolled his shoulders, testing his freedom. His eyes never left mine. "Thank you," he whispered. We stayed like that, sitting on the floor of the prison cabin, predator and prey, captive and captor, our hands still touching because neither of us seemed able to break the contact. "So," I said, forcing my voice to steady. "Here's my deal. You said you'd let me go if I help you figure out what happened. I'm going to hold you to that. But I have conditions. Name them. 1. You don't chain yourself unless absolutely necessary. Being your mate means I calm you, right? So let me do that. Let me help keep you stable. The word mate felt strange on my tongue, but I pushed past it. Tuo, you teach me about werewolves, about your world. If I'm going to investigate this, I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Agreed. And three, when this is over, whether we prove your innocence or guilt, you let me go. You let me walk away and live my life, and you don't come after me. The look he gave me was devastating. Part grief, part longing, part resignation. You're asking me to promise that if we prove I'm innocent, I'll let my mate go. Yes! Mates don't work like that, Nora. The bond. I don't care about the bond. I pulled my hand away and watched him flinch like I'd struck him. I didn't ask to be your mate. I didn't ask to be kidnapped or dragged into supernatural politics or made responsible for your sanity. So, those are my terms. Help me help you, and then let me go. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken things. Finally, he nodded. All right, I promise. When this is over, you're free. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt hollow. Good. I stood up, putting distance between us because the warmth of his skin was still tingling on my palm. Now, I need to wash, eat something, and then we're going back to that clearing. We're going to document everything, photograph every detail, and we're going to figure out what really happened. Agreed. He rose to his feet, and the cabin suddenly felt much smaller. Nora, there's something else you should know. What? The mate bond. It goes both ways. You calm me, yes. But the longer we're together, the more it develops. You're going to start feeling me too. My emotions. My presence. And your body is going to want to be near me, to touch me, toe. He stopped, jaw clenching. I just wanted you to know. So when it starts happening, you understand it's the bond. Not a choice. The implications of that settled over me like ice water. Not a choice. Just like being kidnapped hadn't been a choice. Just like being dragged into his nightmare hadn't been a choice. Then I guess we'd better solve this mystery fast, I said quietly, before the bond takes away what little choice I have left. His expression went dark with guilt, but he didn't argue. He just grabbed a battered jacket from a peg on the wall and headed for the door. Come on, he said. I'll take you to the stream. And then we're going to start hunting for the truth. No matter how ugly it gets. I followed him out into the cold morning and tried not to think about the fact that somewhere between the terror of yesterday and the strange intimacy of this morning, I'd started to see him as a person instead of a monster. Tried not to think about what that meant for both of us. Chapter 4. The massacre site looked different in daylight. Worse, somehow. What the shadows had partially hidden yesterday was now laid bare under the harsh morning sun. The true scale of the slaughter. The evidence of violence in every splintered tree and scorched earth patch. I stood at the edge of the clearing with my camera, trying to see it through a documentary lens rather than feel the horror of it. Asher stood several feet away, his body rigid, staring at the bone field with an expression that made my chest ache. This was where his life had ended, even if his body had kept walking. This was his hell. Tell me what you need from me, I said quietly, raising my camera. He flinched, like he'd forgotten I was there. Document everything. Photos from multiple angles. Especially anything that looks out of place. Weapons, burn patterns, anything that doesn't fit a werewolf attack. I nodded and started working, falling into the familiar rhythm of professional photography. Frame, focus, shoot. Move, adjust, shoot again. It was easier to handle the horror when viewed through a lens, reduced to composition and lighting and technical details. But I couldn't ignore what I was documenting. The bones showed evidence of extreme trauma. Not just bites and claws, but breaks consistent with high impact force. Several skulls had bullet holes. I found more weapons casings military grade. Silver, tipped bullets. Fragments of what looked like flashbang grenades. Burn patterns that suggested accelerants, not just fire from a natural source. This wasn't just a massacre. It was a military operation. Asher. I photographed a section of disturbed earth where something had obviously been buried and then dug up. Come look at this. He approached slowly, and I noticed he was trembling again. Being here was costing him. But when he got within a few feet of me, some of the tension eased from his shoulders. The mate bond at work. My presence stabilizing him even in the middle of his worst nightmare. This area was disturbed. I pointed. See how the soil pattern is different. Something was buried here, then removed. He crouched down, studying the ground with an intensity that reminded me he'd once been a leader. A protector, someone who'd kept an entire pack safe. Evidence, he said. Someone cleaned up. Took whatever didn't fit the narrative of a rogue alpha attack. What would they have taken? Human remains, maybe. Military equipment. Anything that would indicate this was a coordinated assault. His hands dug into the earth, coming up with something small and metallic. Like this. I leaned in to see a silver bullet fragment, partially melted. But it wasn't the bullet that caught my attention. It was the marking on it. Some kind of insignia or logo, still partially visible despite the damage. Can I asked, and when he nodded, I took it carefully and photographed it from every angle. What is this symbol? I don't know. He stood up, swaying slightly, his face going ashen. I've never seen. He cut off mid-sentence, his eyes going distant. I watched his pupils dilate, his breathing becoming harsh. One hand came up to his head, fingers digging into his scalp like he had yesterday. Asher. I stepped closer, and his focus snapped to me with an intensity that should have been frightening. It's coming back, he gasped. The memories. When you're close, when I'm here, it's like something's unlocking. What do you see? Fire. Explosions. The smell of wolfsbane grenades, designed to incapacitate wolves without killing them immediately. I remember shifting, trying to fight back, but my body wouldn't respond right. The poison was spreading. His voice took on a distant quality, like he was narrating a film only he could see. And there was someone, a human, standing at the edge of the clearing, directing the others. I couldn't see his face, but I remember the way he moved. Military training. Professional. A human led the attack on a werewolf pack. It doesn't make sense. He rubbed his eyes, and when he looked at me again, there was more clarity there than I'd seen yet. Humans don't know about us. We have laws, protocols to keep our existence secret. How would humans even know where to find us, let alone how to kill us efficiently? Someone told them. I was thinking it through, organizing the facts like I would a research project. Someone with inside knowledge gave humans the location, the methods, the timing. This was a setup. But why make it look like I did it? Why not just wipe out the pack and cover it up? Because they needed a fall guy. I took another photo of the bullet fragment. If the pack just disappeared, there would be an investigation. Other werewolves looking into it. But if it looked like you went rogue, killed your own pack in a fit of madness, then case closed. Tragic, but not suspicious. No one looks deeper because feral alphas are a known risk. His expression went dark with rage, and I saw his hands clench into fists. Someone set me up. Someone wanted my pack dead and needed me to take the blame. The question is why? What did your pack have that someone else wanted badly enough to commit mass murder? He was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him struggling with something. Finally, territory. We held prime land. Good hunting, isolated enough for safety, but close enough to human civilization for jobs and resources. Several packs had approached me over the years about buying it, merging packs. I always said no. Who approached you? Blackwood pack primarily. Alpha Marcus Blackwood. He runs the largest pack in the region, always expanding, absorbing smaller packs through negotiation or force. He offered me a fortune for the land, offered to make me his second if I'd merge our packs. I refused. Told him my pack was family, not a business asset. When was this? 6 months before the massacre. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture that was both clearer and more disturbing. But before I could voice my thoughts, Asher stiffened, his head snapping toward the tree line. Someone's coming, he said, his voice dropping to a growl. Wolves. 2 of them. They've picked up our scent. Terror spiked through me. The ones hunting you. Likely. He moved between me and the direction of the threat, his body shifting into a protective stance that should have reassured me, but instead made everything more real. Nora, listen carefully. When they get here, stay behind me. Don't speak unless they speak to you directly. And whatever happens, don't run. Running triggers the chase instinct. What are you going to do? His smile was bitter. Try not to get us both killed. 2 figures emerged from the tree line, a man and a woman, both moving with inhuman grace. They were cleaner than Asher, better fed, dressed in practical outdoor gear that looked expensive. But it was their eyes that gave them away. One amber, one pale green, both predatory and focused entirely on us. Asher Thorne. The man spoke first, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. Didn't expect to find you alive, let alone back at the scene of your crime. Reese. Asher's voice was steady, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. Still doing Blackwood's dirty work, I see. The woman, Reese, apparently, smiled without humor. Someone has to clean up messes like you. The question is, what are you doing back here? And who's the human? Every cell in my body screamed to run, to hide, to get away from the predators staring at me like I was prey. But I remembered Asher's warning and forced myself to stay still, to meet their eyes even though it went against every instinct. She's mine, Asher said, and the possession in his voice made something in my chest clench. My mate, and she's under my protection. The male wolf, older, with gray threading through his dark hair, laughed. Your mate, that's Rich. The feral alpha who murdered his pack found his mate in a human photographer. What are the odds? About 1 in 7 million, Asher said quietly. Same as always. Reese was studying me with unsettling intensity. Does she know what you are? What you did? I know. I heard myself say, and both wolves' attention snapped to me. I know what he is, and I know he's innocent. The temperature in the clearing seemed to drop. The male wolf took a step forward, and Asher moved with him, keeping himself between us. Innocent. The wolf's voice was dangerous now. He was found in a clearing with 47 dead wolves. Covered in their blood, his wolf still feral with killing rage. What part of that sounds innocent to you, human? The part where he was poisoned with wolfsbane before the attack, I said, forcing my voice steady. The part where military-grade weapons were used. The part where evidence was removed after the fact. This wasn't one wolf going rogue. This was an organized assault. The silence that followed was deafening. The 2 wolves exchanged glances, something unreadable passing between them. You've been investigating, Reese said slowly. That's why you came back. I need to know the truth, Asher said. Need to remember what really happened. And she's helping me. Or you've managed to manipulate a knave human into believing your lies. The male wolf's eyes narrowed. Either way, she's a witness now. She knows about us. You know the law, Thorne. Witnesses don't survive. Everything happened at once. The male wolf lunged forward, moving faster than my eye could track. Asher intercepted him, and I watched in horror as two apex predators collided with a sound like thunder. They were a blur of motion. Too fast, too violent, more animal than human. "Stop," Reese's voice cracked like a whip, and both males froze mid-fight. "Drake, stand down." "You too, Thorne." Slowly, reluctantly, they separated. Both were breathing hard, blood marking where claws had connected. Asher's eyes had gone fully gold again, the wolf very close to the surface. "This is bigger than one rogue alpha," Reese said, still staring at me. "If what she says is true, if this was an organized attack, then we need to know. Blackwood needs to know. Since when does Blackwood care about the truth?" Asher's voice was rough, more growl than words. "Since his own pack members started dying." Reese's expression was grim. 3 bodies in the last month. Same MO, silver bullets, wolf spen, military precision. Someone's hunting us, Thorne. And if you really were framed, then they're still out there. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about Asher's pack. This was bigger, an ongoing threat to all werewolves. "We'll give you 48 hours, Drake said finally. "Find proof of your innocence. Real, concrete evidence. If you can't," he looked at me and the promise in his eyes was clear, "then you both die." "Understood." Asher nodded, and after a moment, so did I. The 2 wolves melted back into the forest as quickly as they'd appeared, leaving us alone in the clearing with its ghosts and secrets. 48 hours, I said numbly. "That's not much time." "No." Asher turned to me, and I could see the cost of the confrontation in his face, the exhaustion, the barely controlled violence. "But it's more than I had yesterday. We keep investigating. We find whoever did this, and we make them pay." He swayed slightly, and I found myself reaching for him instinctively, my hand on his arm, steadying him. The moment I touched him, some of the gold faded from his eyes. "Come on," I said quietly. "Let's get back to the cabin. You need to rest, and I need to organize these photos. We're going to solve this, Asher. I promise." His hand covered mine, and in his eyes I saw something that terrified me more than the violence, more than the danger. "Hope. Thank you," he whispered, "for believing me, for staying, for not running when you had the chance." I didn't tell him that running hadn't really been a choice. Didn't tell him that some part of me, growing stronger with each hour we spent together, didn't want to run. Didn't tell him that the mate bond was working exactly as he'd warned, pulling me closer even as my mind screamed at the insanity of it all. Instead, I just held his hand and led him away from the massacre site, toward whatever truth we were racing against time to uncover, toward a future that terrified me more than the past ever could. Chapter 5. The next 36 hours blurred together in a haze of investigation, forced proximity, and the growing awareness that the mate bond wasn't just some abstract concept. It was a living thing, tightening around us with each passing hour. We'd converted the cabin into a makeshift command center. My photographs covered every available surface, organized by location and evidence type. Asher had drawn a rough map of the pack territory on the back of an old tarp, marking positions where bodies had been found, entry points, defensive structures that had been breached. I sat cross-legged on the floor, my laptop balanced on my knees, running off a solar charger I'd thankfully had in my photography bag. Asher paced. He was always pacing, that restless predator energy never quite settling, but he didn't go far from me anymore. Couldn't, really. The bond pulled at him if he got more than 10 feet away, made him agitated and volatile. Made me agitated too, which I was trying very hard not to think about. "The weapons casings," I said, studying a photo I'd enhanced on my laptop. They're all the same caliber, same manufacturer. Military surplus, probably sold through gray market channels. But look at this. I zoomed in on the marking I'd photographed earlier. This insignia, it's not military. It's custom. Asher stopped pacing and came to crouch beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body. Close enough that his scent, pine and smoke and something wild, wrapped around me like a physical thing. Focus, Nora. Can you enhance it more? He asked, his breath stirring my hair. I tried to ignore the way my pulse jumped and worked the image, cleaning up the resolution, sharpening the details. Slowly, the marking became clearer. A stylized wolf's head with a crown, surrounded by text too small to read. It's a logo, I murmured. Some kind of organization or company. If I can get internet access, I might be able to reverse image search it. No internet. Too risky. They can track that. He was staring at the screen with an intensity that made me think he was seeing more than just pixels. But I know someone who might recognize it. A wolf in Seattle who trades in illegal weapons. If anyone knows about custom silver ammunition, it's him. Seattle's 100 miles away. We can make it in a day if we move fast. He glanced at me, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. But it means leaving the relative safety of the forest, exposing ourselves to populated areas where other packs have territory. It's dangerous. More dangerous than sitting here with a 48-hour deadline. His smile was brief and bitter. Fair point. I saved the image to a thumb drive and closed my laptop, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting. His knee was touching mine, and that small point of contact sent warmth spreading through my leg, up my spine, making my breath catch. This was the bond. Had to be. Because I'd never in my life been attracted to danger, to darkness, to men who could kill me without breaking a sweat. I liked safe, boring, predictable. Asher Thorne was none of those things. Nora, his voice dropped lower, intimate in the small space. Your heart rate just spiked. And your scent, it's changing. Heat flooded my face. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was gentle, but I felt it everywhere. The bond is strengthening. You're starting to feel the pull. I can smell it on you. Want and confusion and fear all mixed together. Stop that. I pulled back, putting space between us even though it felt wrong. Stop scenting me or reading my emotions or whatever it is you do. I'm not some open book for you two. I can't help it. His hand dropped, and the frustration in his expression was painfully honest. You think I want to know every time I make you uncomfortable. Every time you're scared of me, or attracted to me, or both at once. The bond works both ways, remember. I feel you too. Your presence in my head. Your emotions bleeding into mine. It's like you're always there now, just underneath my skin. The raw vulnerability in his voice stopped my anger cold. He wasn't trying to manipulate me. He was suffering too, in his own way, trapped by biology and fate just as much as I was. What does it feel like? I asked quietly. From your side. He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. Like drowning for 3 years and finally finding air. Like every color was muted and now they're vivid again. Like I've been half alive and you made me whole. He met my gaze, and the naked need in his eyes made my chest tight. It feels like coming home to a place I didn't know existed. And it terrifies me. Because when you leave, when I have to let you go like I promised, I don't know if I'll survive it. The honesty was devastating. I wanted to comfort him, to tell him it would be okay, but I couldn't lie. We both knew what was coming. The investigation would end, one way or another, and I'd made him promise to let me go. I'd made him promise to rip apart the very bond that was keeping him sane. Asher! Don't. He stood abruptly, putting distance between us. Don't apologize or try to make it better. You didn't ask for this. You didn't ask to be kidnapped by a broken alpha who can barely keep his wolf under control. You're doing more than anyone could ask just by staying, by helping. I don't get to demand anything else from you. What if I wanted to give it? The words were out before I could stop them. He went very still. What? I stood too, my laptop falling forgotten to the side. What if I wanted to explore this? The bond, the connection. What if I'm curious about what it could be? Nora, don't. His voice was strained. Don't say things like that unless you mean them. The bond. Once we start acknowledging it, feeding it, it gets stronger. Harder to break. If you let me get close to you that way and then leave. He dragged a hand through his hair. It might actually kill me. Not metaphorically. The severing of a partially formed mate bond can literally kill a wolf. The weight of that settled over me. This wasn't just romance or attraction. It was life and death. And every choice I made had consequences neither of us could escape. Then I won't say it, I said finally. Not until I'm sure. Smart. But he looked disappointed, and that made something in my chest ache. We spent the rest of the evening in tense silence, preparing for the trip to Seattle. Asher packed what few supplies we had. Dried meat, a canteen, the knife I'd watched him sharpen with disturbing efficiency. I organized my equipment, made sure my camera batteries were charged, tried not to think about the fact that I was planning a road trip with my werewolf kidnapper to question an illegal weapons dealer. My life had become absolutely insane. As night fell, I curled up on the bed while Asher settled against the wall, maintaining the distance he'd insisted on. But I could feel him watching me in the darkness, could sense the restless energy of his wolf pacing beneath his skin. Tell me about being an alpha, I said into the quiet. What was it like before? Are you sure you want to know? It's not exactly a bedtime story. I want to understand. I want to know who you were. He sighed, and I heard him shift against the wall. Being an alpha means everything. You feel every member of your pack through the bond. Not as strongly as a mate bond, but enough to know they're safe, healthy content. It's like having 7 heartbeats in sync with yours. When one of them hurts, you hurt. When they're happy, you feel it like sunshine. That sounds beautiful. It was. It was everything. His voice roughened. And when they died, when I lost them all at once, it was like having 7 pieces of my soul ripped out simultaneously. The pack bonds didn't just sever, they shredded. That's what drove me feral, not just the wolfsbane. Losing them all at once broke something fundamental in me. Tears stung my eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to you. The worst part. I can't remember mourning them properly. The 3 years since are a blur of rage and guilt and madness. I haven't honored their memory, haven't said goodbye. I've just been surviving, barely. He paused. Until you. You gave me enough clarity to actually feel the grief. To remember them as people, not just as blood on my hands. I wanted to go to him, to offer comfort, but I remembered his warning about feeding the bond. So I stayed where I was, separated by a dozen feet of floor that might as well have been miles. When this is over, I said carefully, when we clear your name, you'll be able to mourn them properly, build them a memorial, honor who they were. If we clear my name, his voice was heavy with doubt. We have less than 12 hours left, Nora, and all we have is a bullet fragment with a logo on it. Then we'd better make those 12 hours count. Sleep was a long time coming. I drifted in and out, plagued by dreams of wolves and fire, and golden eyes watching me from the darkness. But these dreams were different from the nightmares I'd been having for 3 years. These felt less like horror and more like memory. I saw the massacre from a different angle. Saw figures in tactical gear moving through the trees with military precision. Saw Asher, younger, healthier, still alpha, trying to protect children, to get them to safety, only to be shot with something that dropped him like a stone. Saw a man standing at the edge of the clearing, directing the slaughter with cold efficiency. I woke with a gasp, my heart racing. Nora. Asher was beside the bed in an instant, his hand on my shoulder. Another nightmare. No. A memory. Your memory. I grabbed his arm, using him as an anchor to the present. The bond. It's showing me what happened. I saw the attack, saw you trying to protect them. Asher, there was a man. A human in charge. I couldn't see his face, but I stopped. My blood going cold as pieces clicked into place. The man's posture, the way he moved, something familiar about his build. My father had been military trained. My father had died in a hunting accident 3 years ago, the same time as the massacre. My father had been obsessed with wolves. What is it? Asher was searching my face, his wolf-sharp senses picking up on my sudden terror. What did you remember? I need to go through my father's things. I heard myself say. The boxes I inherited when he died. I never unpacked most of them. It was too painful. But if he was involved in something, if he had secrets. You think your father knew about werewolves? I think my father might have been more than a wildlife photographer and hunting guide. My voice shook. I think he might have been a hunter of a different kind. The implications hung between us, ugly and devastating. If my father had been involved in the massacre, if he'd been the man leading the attack, then I carried the blood of Asher's tormentor in my veins. I was the daughter of the man who destroyed his life. We need to get to Seattle, Asher said grimly. We need answers. And we need them now. He helped me to my feet, and I noticed he didn't let go of my hand immediately. Noticed the way his thumb brushed across my knuckles. The same gesture that had become familiar over the past 2 days. Noticed that I didn't want him to let go. The bond was tightening, pulling us together, even as the truth threatened to tear us apart. And somewhere in the darkness, a clock was ticking down to a deadline that would decide if we lived or died. Together or apart, guilty or innocent, we had 12 hours left to find out which. Chapter 6. We left the cabin before dawn, moving through the forest in silence. Asher led the way, his senses far keener than mine, alert for any sign of the wolves hunting him. I followed in his footsteps, my camera bag slung across my back, trying not to think about what we were walking into. Seattle meant civilization, witnesses, other werewolf packs whose territory we'd be crossing. Every mile closer increased the danger exponentially. But we didn't have a choice. The clock was ticking. How far to the nearest road? I whispered. 3 miles. There's a parking area where hikers leave their cars. If we're lucky, we can hotwire one. He glanced back at me, his eyes catching the pre-dawn light with an amber gleam. I know it's stealing, but... Asher, you kidnapped me. I think we're past worrying about Grand Theft Auto. His smile was brief and surprised. Fair point. We'd been walking for maybe an hour when Asher suddenly stopped, his entire body going rigid. His hand shot out, catching my wrist and pulling me close against his side. What? Quiet. He breathed directly into my ear, and the urgency in his voice killed any protest. We're being tracked. 3 wolves, coming from the northeast. They've picked up our scent. My heart slammed against my ribs. Blackwood's pack? Unknown. But they're moving fast, trying to cut us off before we reach the road. His arm wrapped around my waist, protective and possessive. We need to run. Now. Before I could respond, he pulled me into motion. We ran through the forest, Asher setting a pace that pushed the limits of my endurance. Branches whipped at my face and arms. My lungs burned, but behind us, I could hear them. Inhuman sounds of pursuit, wolves on the hunt. Asher, I can't. He swept me up without breaking stride, carrying me against his chest as he poured on more speed. The world became a blur of green and brown, the rush of wind, and the overwhelming reality of being held by something that was definitely not entirely human. There, he skidded to a halt at the edge of a ravine. Below us, a river churned over rocks, maybe a 30-foot drop. Can you swim? What? No, we can't. They're 30 seconds behind us. Water will mask our scent. His eyes met mine, and I saw the wolf very close to the surface. Trust me, before I could answer, before I could even process what was happening, he jumped. We hit the water hard, the cold shocking the air from my lungs. The current grabbed us immediately, dragging us downstream. Asher kept one arm locked around me as he fought the rapids with inhuman strength, steering us toward the far bank. My camera bag, waterproof thank God, knocked against my back. Water filled my nose, my mouth, and I clung to Asher like he was the only solid thing in the universe. Which, at that moment, he was. He pulled us to shore maybe a quarter-mile downstream, both of us gasping. I collapsed on the rocky bank, coughing up river water, my entire body shaking from cold and adrenaline. Are you hurt? Asher's hands were on me, checking for injuries with a gentleness that contradicted his usual controlled violence. Fine. Just cold. My teeth were chattering so hard I could barely speak. Did we lose them? For now. The water will hide our trail. But they'll pick it up again eventually. He stripped off his soaked jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders, which would have been chivalrous except he needed it more than I did. We need to keep moving. There's an old ranger station about 2 miles from here. Abandoned. We can dry off, rest for a few hours. And if they find us there. His smile was all teeth and no humor. Then I stopped running. The ranger station was exactly as advertised. Abandoned, half collapsed, a relic from the days before the national park had updated their infrastructure. But it had a roof, mostly intact walls, and a wood stove that Asher coaxed to life with disturbing efficiency. I huddled near the fire, stripping out of my soaked outer layers, trying to stop shivering. Asher paced the perimeter, checking windows, testing doors, his protective instincts in overdrive. You should rest, I said. You carried me for miles, then fought the rapids. You have to be exhausted. Can't rest. Too much adrenaline. But even as he said it, I saw him sway slightly, catching himself on the wall. He wasn't just tired. He was running on fumes, had been for 3 years. The brief clarity my presence had given him didn't change the fact that his body was malnourished, damaged, pushed beyond sustainable limits. Asher. I stood up, my clothes still damp but warming. Come here. Sit down before you fall down. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're barely standing. I crossed to him, taking his hand. The moment we touched, I felt it, his exhaustion bleeding through the bond. The bone, deep weariness he'd been hiding. When's the last time you actually rested? Really rested, not just forced yourself to stay conscious. 3 years ago. His admission was quiet, defeated. I can't let my guard down. If I do, the wolf takes over. I wake up miles away with blood on my hands and no memory of how it got there. But you have me now. I calm the wolf. Remember, I guided him to sit against the wall, near the fire but not too close. So sit. Let me keep watch for a while. Nora, you don't know what to watch for. You can't scent other wolves, can't hear them coming. Then we'll both stay awake. But at least sit down. Please. He relented finally, sliding down the wall with a sigh that sounded like it came from his soul. I sat beside him, close enough that our shoulders touched, that point of contact sending warmth through both of us. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle, the wind outside, the distant sound of the river still rushing by. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me shaky and aware of how close we'd come to being caught. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for getting us out of there, for not letting me drown. I'll always protect you." The certainty in his voice was absolute. "Whatever else happens, whatever we find out about your father or my past, that won't change. You're mine to protect. I'm not yours," I said, but it lacked conviction. "Tell that to your scent. Tell it to your heartbeat, which syncs with mine when we're close. Tell it to the bond that's been pulling us together since the moment we met." His head tilted toward me, and I felt his breath stir my hair. "You can deny it all you want, Nora, but your body knows the truth, even if your mind won't accept it." He was right, and that terrified me, because sitting here with him, feeling safe despite the danger, wanting to comfort him despite everything he'd done, that wasn't Stockholm Syndrome or fear or confusion. That was the bond, and it was getting stronger. "What happens," I asked carefully, "if we complete the bond?" "If we give in to it." His body went very still beside me. "Completing a mate bond is permanent. It's not like human marriage. You can't get divorced or walk away. It's a soul, deep connection that only breaks with death. We'd be bound together for life. And if we don't complete it, if we just leave it partial like it is now, it'll hurt. For both of us. Like losing a limb you can still feel. But it won't kill us. Not immediately. Over time, the partial bond might fade to something manageable. A dull ache instead of an open wound." He paused. "Or it might drive me completely insane. Hard to say." The casual way he discussed his potential descent into madness made my chest tight. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry that fate or biology or whatever did this to you. Gave you a mate you can't have. Made you find hope just to have it ripped away. Don't apologize for wanting freedom." His hand found mine in the dim light, threading our fingers together. "You didn't sign up for any of this. And I'm the last person who deserves a mate anyway. I'm broken, Nora. Damaged in ways I'm not sure can ever be fixed. Even if we prove I didn't kill my pack, it doesn't change what I've become. The violence I'm capable of. The madness that's always just beneath the surface." I turned to look at him, and in the firelight, I could see the stark honesty in his face. The self-loathing, the grief, the desperate hope he was trying so hard to suppress. "You're not just the damage," I said. "I've seen you these past few days. The way you protect me, the way you mourn your pack, the way you're fighting so hard to find the truth instead of just giving in to the madness. That's not a monster. That's someone who survived something unsurvivable and is still trying to be good. Nora, I'm not saying I'm ready to complete the bond, or that I forgive you for kidnapping me. I'm not saying anything except that I see you. The real you. And maybe you're not as broken as you think." The look he gave me was devastating, equal parts longing and despair. His free hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone with heartbreaking gentleness. "You're the first good thing that's happened to me in 3 years," he whispered. "And I'm terrified that I'm going to lose you. That when this is over and you're free, I'll never see you again. Never feel this calm again. Never be whole again. Asher." He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. His forehead came to rest against mine, and we breathed the same air, existed in the same moment, suspended in a bubble of possibility that felt both precious and doomed. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. Tell me not to kiss you, and I won't. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll put distance between us. But if you don't say no, if you let this happen, the bond will get stronger. I finished. I know. And you'll hate yourself for wanting me. For choosing the man who kidnapped you, who ruined your life. Who? I closed the distance between us, cutting off his self-recrimination with my mouth. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, questioning. But then he made a sound low in his throat, somewhere between a groan and a growl, and his hand slid into my hair. The kiss deepened, became something fierce and desperate and inevitable. I felt the bond surge between us, a physical rush of warmth and rightness that made my head spin. This was dangerous. This was insane. This was every rational part of me screaming that I was making a terrible choice. But it felt like coming home. We broke apart eventually, both breathing hard. Asher's eyes had gone molten gold, his pupils blown wide with want and something more primal. His hand was shaking where it still cupped my face. Nora. He breathed my name like a prayer. We can't. I shouldn't. I know. I rested my hand over his racing heart. I know all the reasons this is a bad idea, but I'm tired of fighting what I feel. I'm tired of pretending the bond doesn't exist. I'm tired of denying that when I'm with you, I feel... What? His voice was rough, desperate. What do you feel? Safe scene. Like maybe I've been looking for this my whole life without knowing it. I met his golden eyes, saw myself reflected there. I'm not ready to complete the bond. I'm not ready for forever. But maybe I'm ready to try. His smile was brilliant and broken and beautiful. Try. I can work with try. He kissed me again, slower this time, savoring it. And I let myself fall into it, into him. Into the impossible connection that was pulling us together against all reason. When we finally pulled apart, we stayed close, my head on his shoulder, his arm around me. Outside, wolves might be hunting us. In Seattle, answers waited that could destroy us. And somewhere ahead, a truth loomed that could tear apart this fragile thing building between us. But for now, in this abandoned ranger station with firelight dancing on the walls, we had this moment. And maybe that was enough. Asher's hand stilled in my hair, his entire body going rigid. They found us. I heard it a second later, the sound of footsteps outside, too many to count. Voices conferring in low tones, the unmistakable presence of predators surrounding the building. How many? I whispered. At least 6. He was already moving, positioning himself between me and the door. Stay behind me. Whatever happens, don't run. Don't make yourself prey. The door slammed open, and wolves poured into the small space. I recognized Reese and Drake from before, but the others were unfamiliar. 4 more wolves, all moving with predatory grace, all focused on Asher with lethal intent. Thorne. A new voice, this one carrying authority that made the others defer. A man stepped through the doorway, and I knew immediately he was an alpha. The power rolled off him like heat, oppressive and undeniable. You've been a hard man to find. Blackwood. Asher's voice was steady, but I felt the tremor running through him. Come to finish what you started? Alpha Marcus Blackwood was everything Asher wasn't. Polished? Well, fed, dressed in expensive outdoor gear that probably cost more than my car. He looked like a successful businessman playing at wilderness adventure, except for his eyes. They held the same predatory gleam as all the others. Finish what I started. Blackwood's laugh was cold. You mean putting down the rabid alpha who murdered his entire pack? Yes. I suppose I did come to finish that. I didn't kill them. Asher's hands were clenched into fists, his body vibrating with barely contained violence. Someone set me up. Someone with the resources to hire human mercenaries, to make it look like I went rogue. Someone who wanted my territory badly enough to commit mass murder. And you think that someone was me? Blackwood's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. That's quite an accusation. We have evidence, I heard myself say, and 6 pairs of predator eyes turned to me. Military-grade weapons with custom insignias. Wolfsbane grenades. Evidence of organized assault. Not random violence. This was a hit, not a rampage. And who are you, little human? Blackwood studied me with unsettling intensity. She's my mate, Asher said, his voice carrying a warning growl. And she's under my protection. Your mate. Blackwood's eyebrows rose. How? Convenient. Tell me, does she know what you're capable of? Has she seen you when the madness takes over? Because I have. I was there in the aftermath, Thorne. I saw what you did to those people. Children torn apart. Elders ripped to shreds. Your own sister. Stop. The word came out as a snarl, Asher's control fracturing. I could see him shaking, fighting the shift, the wolf surging toward the surface. I did the only thing I could think of. I pressed my hand against his back, letting my presence calm him through the bond. Breathe, I whispered. Don't let him bait you. Stay with me. The tension in his muscles eased fractionally. The gold in his eyes dimmed slightly. Around us, the other wolves watched with expressions ranging from surprise to suspicion. Interesting, Blackwood murmured. She really does calm you. The mate bond at work. How very convenient. What do you want? Blackwood. Asher's voice was steadier now, though still rough. To give you a choice. Come with me peacefully. Face werewolf justice. Answer for your crimes. In exchange, I'll spare your human mate. She can go back to her life, never bother us again. He paused. Or resist, and we kill you both right here. Your choice. It wasn't really a choice, and we all knew it. Werewolf justice for a pack murderer meant execution. Slow, painful, public. A warning to others. And if we prove he's innocent, I challenged. If we find evidence that someone else orchestrated the massacre, then I'll personally hunt down whoever's responsible and make them pay. Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. But you won't find that evidence, because it doesn't exist. Asher Thorne is guilty, and deep down, I think even he knows it. We have until dawn. Reese spoke up from her position by the door. The 48 hours we gave them. We should honor that. Blackwood shot her an annoyed look but nodded. Fine. You have until sunrise. 6 hours. Find your evidence, prove your innocence, or come quietly. Those are your options. He gestured to his pack, and they filed out of the ranger station with the same eerie coordination they'd entered with. Only Reese paused at the door, her expression unreadable. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I hope you find what you're looking for. The attacks on our pack members, they've escalated. Whoever's doing this, they're not stopping. If you really are innocent, if there's really someone out there hunting us. She didn't finish the sentence. Then she was gone, and we were alone again. Asher turned to me, and the devastation in his face made my heart clench. 6 hours. That's all we have left. Then we'd better stop wasting time. I grabbed my still, damp jacket, checked my camera bag. We get to Seattle. Find your weapons dealer. Trace that insignia. We have a lead. We follow it. And if it goes nowhere? I met his eyes, saw the fear there, not of death, but of losing the fragile hope we'd built together. Then we face whatever comes together, I said. But I'm not giving up on you, Asher Thorne. Not yet. His arms came around me, pulling me against his chest in a fierce embrace. I felt his heart racing against mine, felt the bond singing between us. Stronger now after the kiss. Whatever happens, he murmured into my hair. Thank you. For believing in me. For staying. For giving me something worth fighting for again. I held him tighter, trying not to think about the clock ticking down. trying not to think about what dawn would bring. Chapter 7. We made it to Seattle just after midnight, stealing into the city under cover of darkness. Asher had hot-wired a truck from the parking area, just as he'd promised, and we'd driven in tense silence, both of us acutely aware of the deadline hanging over our heads. 4 hours until dawn. 4 hours to find proof of innocence or face execution. The city felt alien after days in the wilderness. Too many lights. Too many sounds. Too many people. I watched Asher's knuckles go white on the steering wheel as we navigated through late night traffic, his enhanced senses clearly overwhelmed by the sensory assault. "The weapons dealer?" I prompted. "Where do we find him?" "Underground market in the International District. Goes by the name Shen." Asher's voice was tight. "He's a wolf, neutral territory. Deals in specialty items for the supernatural community. If anyone knows about custom silver ammunition, it's him." We parked in a shadowy alley and made our way on foot through streets that grew progressively seedier. I stayed close to Asher, hyper-aware of the way his eyes scanned every shadow, every doorway, his body coiled and ready for violence. The entrance to the underground market was through a noodle shop, the kind of place that looked completely ordinary except for the heavily tattooed man guarding a door marked "Private." He took one look at Asher and tensed. "Asher Thorne. Heard you were dead, or mad, or both. Not dead yet, Quan. Need to see Shen." Quan's eyes slid to me, and I saw him inhale deeply, scenting me. His expression shifted to something between surprise and concern. "You brought your mate to the night market." Bold move. Or stupid. Clock's ticking. "We doing this or not?" After a moment, Quan stepped aside and opened the door. "Your funeral. Shen's in the back, usual spot." "But Thorne, there's a bounty on you. Every pack in the region knows you're alive now. You might not walk out of here." "Story of my life," Asher muttered, and pulled me through the door. The underground market was exactly what it sounded like. A warren of tunnels beneath the city, lined with stalls selling everything from spelled charms to illegal weapons to substances I couldn't identify and probably didn't want to. The clientele was diverse and dangerous, were wolves. Yes, but also things I'd never believed existed. People with eyes that glowed different colors, skin that seemed to shimmer, presences that made my hindbrain scream, "Predator," even more urgently than Asher did. This was the supernatural world, laid bare. And I was walking through it as a fragile human with only a half, feral werewolf between me and everything that might want to eat me. Asher's hand found mine, his grip tight and possessive. "Stay close. Don't make eye contact with anyone. And if something happens to me, you run. Don't look back. Don't try to help. Just run." "I'm not leaving you. Nora, we've had this argument." "I'm not running. Deal with it." His grip tightened, and through the bond, I felt a surge of emotion, fear, frustration, and something that might have been love if we'd had time for such things. Shen's stall was at the back of the market, a small alcove filled with weapons of every description. The man himself was ancient. His face seamed with wrinkles, his eyes milky with cataracts. But when he looked up at our approach, I saw those eyes flash amber and knew he could see far more than his appearance suggested. "Asher Thorne." Shen's voice was a rasp like stones grinding together. "The ghost returns. Come to haunt me. Need information, Shen." "About custom silver ammunition." Asher pulled out the bullet fragment I'd photographed, now carefully wrapped in cloth. "This insignia. You recognize it." Shen took the fragment with gnarled hands, holding it close to his face. His expression didn't change, but I saw his fingers tighten on the metal. "Where did you get this?" "The clearing where my pack died. Someone used these bullets in the massacre." Asher leaned forward. I need to know who makes them, who buys them, who? This is Hunter's Guild work. Shen's voice was flat, final. Specialized ammunition for killing supernatural beings. They've been around for centuries, operating in secret. This particular marking, he traced the crowned wolf symbol. This is from their elite division. The ones who take contracts for organized hits. My blood ran cold. Contracts. Someone hired them to kill Asher's pack. That's what I'm saying, girl. The Hunters Guild doesn't do random violence. They're mercenaries. Someone with money and knowledge paid them to wipe out the Thorne pack and frame the Alpha for it. Ooh. Asher's voice had dropped to a growl. Who has that kind of money and that kind of access to hunter networks? Shen was quiet for a long moment. Only another Alpha would have the resources. And only someone ambitious would risk the exposure. If the werewolf community found out an Alpha hired humans to kill his own kind. He shook his head. That's the kind of thing that starts wars. Blackwood, I said. The pieces were clicking into place with horrible clarity. Marcus Blackwood wanted the territory. He hired the hunters, had them frame Asher, and then positioned himself as the one dealing with the rogue Alpha threat. It gave him cover to absorb Thorne territory and strengthened his reputation. You have proof of this? Shen asked. Just the bullet, and our theory, and about 3 hours before Blackwood executes us both. Asher's frustration was palpable. I need more, Shen. I need something concrete that ties Blackwood to the Hunters Guild. Can't help you there. Shen handed back the fragment. But I can tell you this, the Guild keeps records. Every contract, every payment, every target. It's how they avoid double, crosses, and ensure payment. If Blackwood hired them, there'll be a paper trail. We're Guild headquarters, Seattle. But Thorne, Shen's expression was grave. The Guild doesn't take kindly to supernatural beings breaking into their base. You go in there, you're not coming out. Then I'll die trying, Asher said simply. Because I'm not letting Blackwood win. I'm not letting him get away with murdering 47 innocent people. Before anyone could respond, the market erupted into chaos. Wolves poured into the underground space from multiple entrances. Blackwood's pack, moving with military precision. I heard screaming, the crash of overturned stalls, the sounds of violence as they cut through the crowd. They'd found us. Go. Shen shoved us toward a side tunnel. There's a maintenance exit 3 corridors down. Run. Asher grabbed my hand and pulled me into motion. We ran through the tunnels as the sounds of pursuit echoed behind us. I could hear them gaining, could hear Blackwood's voice calling out orders. Veer! Asher pointed to a ladder leading up to what looked like a storm drain. Climb! I climbed, my hands slipping on the wet rungs, Asher right behind me providing a boost. We emerged in an alley. The cool night air a shock after the close confines of the underground. But we'd barely taken 3 steps when wolves appeared at both ends of the alley, cutting off our escape. We were trapped. Blackwood stepped out of the shadows, flanked by Drake and 4 other wolves. His expression was pleasant, almost amused. Out of time, Thorne. The sun's coming up in 2 hours. You haven't found your magical evidence. So here's how this ends: you surrender, we make it quick. Or you fight, and we make it slow. Either way, you die. Your mate, too, unfortunately. Witnesses and all. We know about the Hunters Guild, I blurted out. We know you hired them to kill Asher's pack. We know this was all a setup. Blackwood's smile didn't waver. Interesting theory. Got any proof? The bullets, the insignia, the pattern of attacks on your own pack members. You've been using the guild to eliminate rivals, haven't you? Making it look like there's some external threat when really it's you, consolidating power. Smart human. Shame you'll never get to share those theories with anyone. He gestured to his wolves. Take them. Everything happened at once. The wolves lunged. Asher shifted. I actually watched it happen, watched his body blur and reform into something massive and terrifying and beautiful. A wolf the size of a grizzly bear, with amber eyes that glowed with intelligence and rage. And he fought like he was already dead, with nothing left to lose. I'd seen predators fight in documentaries, had photographed animals in combat. But this was different. This was supernatural power and 3 years of pent-up rage unleashed in a confined space. Asher tore through Blackwood's wolves like they were paper, his jaws closing on throats, his claws ripping through flesh. But there were too many of them. For every one he took down, 2 more pressed the attack. I saw blood. So much blood. Couldn't tell if it was his or theirs. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed a piece of broken metal from the alley debris and swung it at the nearest wolf, threatening Asher's flank. The wolf turned on me with a snarl, and I knew I'd made a fatal mistake. But before it could reach me, Asher was there, intercepting the attack with a roar that shook the alley walls. He was protecting me. Even outnumbered, even losing, he was still trying to keep me safe. The wolf, Asher, took a hit that should have been mine, silver claws raking across his side. He yelped, a sound that tore at my heart, and stumbled. Blackwood moved in for the kill. No! The scream ripped from my throat. I threw myself between Blackwood and Asher without thinking, without caring that I was human and fragile and completely outmatched. I just knew I couldn't watch him die. Blackwood stopped, his claws inches from my throat. Stupid, brave, and completely foolish. Step aside, human. This doesn't concern you. As innocent. Tears were streaming down my face. You know he's innocent? You know you did this to him, to his pack. How can you live with yourself? Quite comfortably, actually. Blackwood's expression was cold. Werewolf politics are brutal, girl. The weak don't survive. Thorne was weak. Too attached to his pack, too principled to do what was necessary to expand his territory. I simply accelerated the inevitable. You murdered children. I removed obstacles. He grabbed my arm, pulling me aside. Now get out of the way before I. Asher hit him like a freight train. I'd thought Asher was fighting hard before. I was wrong. This was what happened when you threatened a werewolf's mate. All control went out the window, replaced by pure protective fury. The 2 alphas collided in a blur of fur and fangs and violence. I scrambled backward, pressed against the alley wall, watching in horror as they tore into each other with lethal intent. Asher was stronger, more vicious, fighting with the desperation of someone who had nothing left to lose. But Blackwood was well fed, well rested, not half mad from 3 years of isolation. The fight was brutal and brief. Asher got his jaws around Blackwood's throat, and I thought it was over. But Blackwood's remaining wolves piled on, dragging Asher off their alpha, holding him down. I watched him shift back to human, naked and bleeding and still fighting, even as they restrained him with silver chains. Enough! Blackwood shifted back as well, one hand to his throat where blood leaked from shallow wounds. We end this now. He pulled a gun, real bullets, probably silver, and aimed it at Asher's head. Time seemed to slow down. I saw Asher's eyes find mine across the alley, saw resignation and sorrow and love in that golden gaze. Saw him mouth 2 words, I'm sorry. And something inside me broke. The bond, which had been growing stronger over the past days, suddenly surged. I felt Asher's pain like it was my own, felt his desperation, felt the wolf inside him howling for help it couldn't reach. Felt the mate bond screaming at me to save him. I didn't think. Didn't plan. Just moved. I threw myself at Blackwood just as he pulled the trigger. The bullet meant for Asher caught me in the shoulder instead, spinning me around with the impact. Pain exploded through my body, bright and sharp and overwhelming. I heard Asher roar, pure anguish, pure rage. Felt him surge against his restraints with inhuman strength. The silver chains snapped like thread. And then he was shifting again, but this time it was different. This time, he was something more than wolf, more than man. Something primal and terrifying and unstoppable. The bond had unlocked something. My sacrifice, my willingness to die for him, had given him access to power he'd locked away. What happened next would haunt my nightmares and dreams in equal measure. Asher moved through Blackwood's wolves like they weren't even there. I saw him tear the throat out of one, break the spine of another, his movements so fast they blurred. Drake tried to intervene and got thrown into a wall hard enough to crack brick. And then Asher reached Blackwood. Wait. Blackwood raised his hands, his confidence finally cracking. Wet. We can deal. I can. Asher's jaws closed around his throat, and I looked away. The sounds stopped. The fight was over. I was lying in a pool of my own blood, my shoulder on fire, my vision blurring. I felt Asher beside me, human again, naked and bloody but alive, his hands frantically pressing against my wound. No, no, no. His voice was breaking. Nora, stay with me. Stay with me, damn it. You don't get to die. You don't get to. Did we win? I managed to ask. You stupid, brave, perfect woman. He was crying now, his tears mixing with the blood on my skin. Why would you do that? Why would you take that bullet? Because my vision was fading, the world getting distant. Because you're mine too. Mate bond works both ways, remember. His hand cradled my face, and through the bond, I felt his anguish, his terror of losing me. I'm going to save you. I'm going to. The claiming bite. I whispered, remembering our earlier conversations about werewolf bonds. It can save me, right? The bond can heal. Not completely. You're too hurt, you've lost too much blood. But it might stabilize you long enough to get you to a hospital. His eyes were wild with desperation. But Nora, a claiming bite is permanent. It's not the full mate bond, but it's close. It'll tie you to me in ways you can't undo. You'll have some of my traits, my healing, my lifespan. You'll be part of my world forever. Sounds better than dying. I tried to smile. Do it, Asher. Save me. And then we finish this. We get the proof. We clear your name. We, together. He finished. We do it together. He leaned down, and I felt his mouth on my throat, over my pulse point. His teeth grazed my skin, gentle despite their sharpness. This will hurt, he warned. Everything hurts already. He bit down. The pain was excruciating, worse than the bullet, worse than anything I'd ever felt. It was like liquid fire flooding my veins, rewriting something fundamental in my DNA. I screamed, my body arching, and Asher held me through it, murmuring apologies and promises and love confessions against my skin. And then, slowly, the pain transformed into something else. Warmth, power, connection. The bond exploded between us, no longer a gentle pull, but a roaring certainty. I could feel him now, really feel him. His emotions, his presence, his wolf. And he could feel me too. The full force of what I'd been holding back. My fear and attraction and the growing love I'd been too scared to acknowledge. My shoulder was still bleeding, but slower now. The pain was fading to something manageable. My vision cleared, sharpened. I could see details I'd never noticed before, could smell things I'd never smelled, could feel the mate bond settling into place like a key turning in a lock. Nora. Asher's face swam into focus above me. Can you hear me? I can hear everything. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Heartbeats 3 alleys over. Sirens in the distance. Your wolf purring. My wolf doesn't purr. It is right now. It's satisfied. Because I'm yours now. Really yours. His smile was brilliant through his tears. And I'm yours, always was. But now it's sealed. He helped me sit up, and I looked around the alley. Blackwood was dead, his neck at an unnatural angle. His wolves were either unconscious or had fled. Only Reese remained, standing at the alley entrance, her expression unreadable. He confessed, she said quietly, before the end. I heard it all, the Hunters' Guild, the setup, the murders he ordered to consolidate power. I'll testify to the council. Clear your name. Why? Asher asked, his arm protective around my waist. Why help us? Because I have a daughter. She's 7. And if someone like Blackwood stays in power, keeps hiring humans to kill supernatural beings, eventually they'll come for her too. Reese met his eyes. You didn't kill your pack. I knew it, deep down. You loved them too much, and now we have proof. She pulled out her phone, showed us the recording she'd made. Blackwood's confession, his threats, all caught in digital clarity. Go, she said. Get your mate to a hospital. Let me clean up here. By tomorrow night, the council will know the truth. The Thorne pack name will be cleared. Asher looked like he wanted to argue, but I was swaying against him, the adrenaline fading and taking my newfound strength with it. Thank you, he told Reese. Then he swept me up into his arms and carried me out of the alley into the pre-dawn darkness. I woke up in a hospital room to the sound of steady beeping and the smell of antiseptic. My shoulder was bandaged, an IV in my arm, and Asher was asleep in the chair beside my bed, his hand wrapped around mine. He looked different in sleep. Younger, softer, the harsh lines of grief and madness smoothed away. He was clean, wearing borrowed clothes, his wounds already healing with supernatural speed. He was beautiful. As if sensing my gaze, his eyes opened. Amber, gold in the dim light, focusing on me with instant alertness. You're awake. He was beside me immediately, his hand cupping my face. How do you feel? Like I got shot, bitten by a werewolf, and bound to him for eternity. So, pretty good considering. I managed a smile. Did it work? Are we clear? The council convened an emergency session. Reese's testimony, the recording, the evidence we gathered. It was enough. Blackwood's crimes have been exposed. His pack has been disbanded, his territory redistributed, and the Thorne pack name has been officially cleared. So you're free. We're free. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. Though I'm not sure what that means anymore. My pack is gone. My territory is being absorbed by others. I'm an alpha without anyone to lead. Then start over. I threaded my fingers through his. Build a new pack. Offer refuge to rogues and displaced wolves. Be the leader you were before, but wiser now. Stronger. Is that what you want? To be part of a pack? To be a Luna? His eyes searched mine, vulnerable and hopeful. Because you're bound to me now, Nora. The claiming bite. It's permanent. You're going to live a werewolf lifespan, have enhanced senses, be tied to my world. But you didn't really choose it. You were dying and? I stopped him with a kiss. When I pulled back, I saw the wonder in his expression, the cautious hope. I chose, I said firmly. Maybe not in the best circumstances, but I chose. I chose to save you in that alley. I chose to accept the bite. I chose this bond, Asher. And I'm choosing it again right now, in full daylight, completely sober, not dying. I'm choosing you. Why? The question was a whisper. Because you see me. Really see me. The parts I hide from everyone else. The loneliness, the walls, the way I've always felt more comfortable with animals than people. You see all of it, and you don't ask me to change. I cupped his face in my hands. And because I see you too. Not the monster everyone believed you were, but the man who protected his pack, who fought for justice, who was willing to die to save innocence. That's who you really are, Asher Thorne. And I love that man. His breath caught. Say it again. I love you. The words felt right, felt true. I love you, you aggravating, traumatized, beautiful werewolf. And I want to build a life with you. A pack with you. A future with you. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promise. Through the bond, I felt his joy, his relief, his overwhelming love pouring into me. When we finally broke apart, we were both crying and laughing and holding on to each other like we'd never let go. I love you too, he said against my hair. I've loved you since the moment you touched me in that cabin and called me by my name. Since you chose to believe in me when everyone else thought I was a monster. Since you threw yourself in front of a bullet meant for me. So what now? I asked. What do we do with our happily ever after? His smile was slow and full of possibility. Now we investigate your father's journal. We find out how deep the Hunters Guild operation goes. We make sure no other pack suffers what mine did. And we build something new, something better. A pack that welcomes rogues, that protects the vulnerable, that stands against threats like Blackwood. Sounds dangerous. Extremely. Sounds perfect. I kissed him again, feeling the bond hum between us, feeling the rightness of this impossible choice. When do we start? When you're ready. When? I'm ready now. His laugh was warm and real and full of life. Then we start now. Together. And through the hospital window, I watched the sun rise on our first day of freedom, our first day of truth, our first day of a future we'd fought and bled and nearly died for. A future that was finally ours. Chapter 8. I was released from the hospital 3 days later with strict instructions to rest, avoid strenuous activity, and follow up with my doctor in a week. The nurse giving me my discharge papers had no idea that my shoulder was already nearly healed, that I could hear her whispering to her colleague 2 rooms away, or that the man signing me out wasn't entirely human. The claiming bite had changed me in ways I was still discovering. Asher had rented us a small cabin outside the city. Nothing like the prison he'd kept me in before, but an actual vacation rental with electricity, running water, and internet. It felt surreal to be living something approaching a normal life after everything we'd been through. We spent the first day just existing together. No investigations, no running, no life or death situations. Just me and Asher, learning how to be around each other without the urgency of survival driving every interaction. I discovered he was a terrible cook, but made excellent coffee. That he liked to read. Actual paper books, worn and dog-eared from multiple readings. That he hummed unconsciously when he was content, a low rumble that I felt through the bond more than heard. And I discovered that being bound to him through the claiming bite meant I was never truly alone anymore. I could feel his presence like a warm weight in the back of my mind. Could sense his emotions even when he tried to hide them. Could tell when he was nearby even with my eyes closed. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like coming home. On the second day, I asked him to bring in the boxes from my father's storage unit. We'd had them shipped to the cabin. 3 large plastic tubs that contained everything I'd inherited when my father died. I'd barely looked through them at the time, too grief-stricken to face the reality of his death. Now, sitting on the cabin floor surrounded by the detritus of a life I'd never fully understood, I felt a different kind of grief settling over me. "You don't have to do this," Asher said quietly. He was sitting across from me, giving me space but close enough that I could reach for him if I needed. "Not yet. Not if you're not ready. I need to know." I opened the first box, and the smell of my father's cologne hit me like a physical blow. If he was involved in the massacre, if he was part of the Hunters Guild, I need to know the truth. The first box contained mostly ordinary things: clothes, books, old photographs of me as a child. My mother, who died when I was 10, smiled at me from a faded picture. I set it aside carefully and moved to the second box. More personal effects. His cameras, professional grade, like mine. Field notebooks filled with observations on wildlife behavior, sketches of animals. Perfectly ordinary work from a wildlife photographer. But tucked at the bottom, wrapped in a waterproof bag, was a leather journal I'd never seen before. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The leather was worn, the pages yellowed with age, and written on the inside cover in my father's distinctive handwriting: Field Notes. Classified. "Asher," I whispered. "I found something." He moved closer, reading over my shoulder as I opened to the first page. The entries started innocuously enough. Observations on wolf pack behavior, movement patterns, territorial markers. The kind of notes a wildlife photographer might keep. But as I flipped through the pages, the tone changed. Pack located in Olympic National Forest. Approximately 45-50 individuals. Alpha male, mid-30s. Identified as Asher Thorne. Territory well defended but isolated. Potential target classification high value. My stomach turned. I kept reading. Initial surveillance suggests strong pack bonds, organized hierarchy. Alpha shows tactical awareness. Former military. Pack includes juveniles and elderly. Extraction would require careful planning to minimize collateral damage. Extraction. Collateral damage. The clinical language made bile rise in my throat. "Keep going," Asher said, his voice carefully neutral, but I could feel his tension through the bond. The entries continued, becoming more detailed. My father had spent months surveilling Asher's pack, documenting their routines, their vulnerabilities, their defenses. He'd sketched maps of the territory, noted which pack members were strongest, where the children gathered, and then, 6 months before the massacre, contract accepted. Client Alpha Marcus Blackwood, Seattle Territory. Payment Thai 500,000 for complete pack elimination and frame job. Target to appear as rogue Alpha attack. Guild has approved operation. Team assembly begins next week. I couldn't read anymore. The journal fell from my numb fingers, and I heard a sound escape my throat that was half sob, half scream. My father. My kind, patient father who'd taught me to love wildlife, to respect nature, to see the beauty in predators. That man had been a lie. The real man. The one who'd written these cold, clinical notes about murdering children. I'd never known him at all. Nora. Asher's arms came around me, pulling me against his chest. Breathe. Just breathe. He killed them. The words came out broken. My father led the team that murdered your pack. That tortured you. That destroyed your life. And I'm his daughter. His blood runs in my veins. The same blood that... Stop. Asher turned me to face him, his hands gripping my shoulders. You are not responsible for his choices. You didn't know. You couldn't have known. But I carry his guilt. I'm connected to the man who... I couldn't finish. The horror was too overwhelming. Through the bond, I felt Asher's emotions. Grief, rage, but underneath it all, a fierce protectiveness directed at me. He wasn't angry at me. He was angry for me. Your father made his choices, Asher said firmly. You've made yours. You chose to help me, to believe in me, to save my life. You chose to accept the bond, to stand with me against Blackwood. Those were your choices, Nora Kane. Not his. Yours. How can you even look at me? Tears were streaming down my face. How can you touch me? Knowing that my father. Because you're not him. Asher cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. You're nothing like him. You're brave and compassionate, and you see the humanity in monsters. You're the woman who risked everything to prove my innocence, who took a bullet meant for me, who chose to bind herself to me forever. That's who you are. Not your father's daughter. Mine. The possessive growl in that last word sent a shiver through me despite my anguish. We need to keep reading, I said finally, wiping my tears. We need to know everything. The guild. The other packs they've targeted, all of it. Asher hesitated, then nodded. Together. We spent the next several hours going through the journal methodically. The picture it painted was even worse than I'd imagined. The Hunters Guild had been operating for over a century, passed down through families who specialized in killing supernatural beings. They maintained detailed records on every major werewolf pack in North America, sold their services to the highest bidder, usually rival alphas willing to pay for deniability. My father had been one of their top operatives, the Wolf Whisperer, they'd called him, because he could track and study werewolf packs better than anyone else. He'd been involved in at least a dozen pack eliminations over 20 years. 20 years. My entire childhood, he'd been a hired killer. Every time he'd gone on a photography assignment, every time he'd taught me about predator behavior, every bedtime story about wolves, it had all been a lie built on blood. Look at this. Asher pointed to an entry near the end. 2 months before the massacre. He writes about having doubts. I read the passage, my father's handwriting less steady than usual. Thorne Pack is different. The alpha genuinely cares for his people. Watched him spend 3 hours teaching cubs to hunt yesterday. Patient, gentle, protective. These aren't monsters. They're families. Maybe I've been wrong. Maybe the guild has been wrong. But Blackwood's payment would set up Nora for life. College fund, trust fund, everything she'd need. One more job. Just one more, and I can retire. Can finally tell her the truth. Can maybe make amends. The entry ended there. The next one was dated the night of the massacre. It's done. Thorne Pack eliminated. Alpha injected with Wolfspen will appear as if he went feral. Evidence planted. But something went wrong. Thorne survived, might remember. Need to disappear, go underground. If he comes for revenge, at least Nora will have the money. At least she'll be safe. There were no more entries after that. He died 3 days later, I said numbly. Hunting accident in Montana. But now I wonder if it was really an accident. Asher finished. Or if someone silenced him. The guild doesn't like loose ends. I closed the journal, unable to look at it anymore. My father's last thoughts had been about securing my future with blood money, about protecting me from consequences I'd never asked for. There's more, Asher said, reaching into the third box. He pulled out a folder thick with documents. Bank statements, payment records. And this. He held up a letter, official looking, with a gold seal at the bottom. I took it with shaking hands and read, Dear Mr. Kane, on behalf of the Hunters Guild. We regret to inform you that your contract with Alpha Marcus Blackwood has been terminated effective immediately. Due to complications arising from the Thorne Pack operation, including the survival of the target Alpha and potential exposure of Guild operations, all payments have been voided and all records sealed. Your services are no longer required. Consider this your severance from the Guild. Any attempt to contact us or discuss Guild operations with outside parties will result in immediate termination. Permanent termination. We trust you understand the seriousness of this matter. The letter was dated 2 days before my father's death. They killed him, I said flatly. The Guild killed him because he was a liability. Because Asher survived and might remember, might expose them. And they made it look like an accident. Asher's voice was dark. Just like they made my pack slaughter look like a rogue alpha attack. They're good at covering their tracks. I thought about my father's death. The official report said he'd fallen from a cliff while photographing elk. His body had been found at the bottom of a ravine. Camera smashed beside him. No witnesses, no evidence of foul play. Except now I knew what to look for. "The guild is still operating," I said, my grief hardening into something else. Something cold and focused. "They killed your pack, killed my father, and they're still out there taking contracts. How many other packs have they eliminated? How many other families destroyed? That's what we're going to find out." Asher's expression was grim. "And we're going to shut them down. Permanently." "How?" "They've been operating for over a century. They're organized, well funded, and they know how to hide. But we have something they don't expect." He gestured to the journal, the documents. "Your father's records. Detailed accounts of their operations, their methods, their contacts. He documented everything, probably as insurance. This is evidence that could expose them to the supernatural community and human law enforcement. If we can get someone to listen. The Werewolf Council will listen. Especially now that Blackwood's crimes have been exposed." Asher pulled out his phone. "Reese said she'd help. And there are other alphas, good ones, who've lost pack members to suspicious accidents. If we can prove the guild was responsible, if we can build a coalition, we start a war." I met his eyes. "Between werewolves and the Hunters Guild. They started it when they began taking contracts to murder innocents." His voice was hard. "We're just going to finish it." I should have been horrified. Should have argued for a peaceful solution, for diplomacy, for anything other than violence. But I thought about those 47 graves in that clearing. Thought about Sarah, who'd been turning 8, Marcus and Elena, who'd been planning for children. All the lives cut short by men like my father, taking money to kill families. "I'm in," I said. "Whatever it takes." We shut them down. Asher's smile was fierce and proud. "That's my mate." He pulled me into his arms, and I let myself be held, let myself draw strength from the bond between us. My father had been wrong, had chosen money over morality, violence over compassion. But I could choose differently. I could choose to fight for the families who couldn't fight for themselves. To make sure no other pack suffered what Asher's had. To turn my father's sins into something resembling justice. "There's one more thing," Asher said quietly. "In your father's journal. Did you see the last page?" I shook my head, and he carefully opened the journal to the final entry. One I'd missed in my distress. It was dated the day before my father died, and the handwriting was shaky, uncertain. "Nora, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. The guild doesn't forgive mistakes, and I made a big one. I let Asher Thorne survive, and worse. I started to regret what I'd done. I know you'll hate me when you learn the truth. You should. I've done terrible things, justified them with money and duty, and lies I told myself about protecting humanity from monsters. But the real monster was me all along. I kept these records because I hoped someday they'd be useful. That maybe someone could use them to stop the guild. To prevent what happened to the Thorn Pack from happening to others. I never imagined that someone might be you. I'm sorry, Nora. Sorry I lied to you. Sorry I built your life on blood money. Sorry I won't be there to help you fix what I broke. But if there's any part of you that can forgive me, use these records. Stop the guild. Be the person I should have been. I love you. I'm sorry. I hope someday that can be enough. Dad. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. This was as close to an apology as I'd ever get. As close to redemption as a man like my father could reach. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. He knew, I whispered. At the end, he knew what he'd done was wrong. He tried to make it right. Too little, too late, Asher said. But his voice was gentle. But it's something. And the fact that he left you these records, that gives us a weapon against the guild. That gives his death meaning, even if his life was built on lies. I closed the journal carefully and set it aside. Then we use it. We use everything he left us. And we make sure the Hunters Guild can never destroy another family. Together? Asher agreed. Together. We spent the rest of the night organizing the evidence, building our case. By the time the sun rose, we had a plan: contact the Werewolf Council, present the evidence, and build a coalition of packs to systematically dismantle the Hunters Guild's operations. It would be dangerous. The guild wouldn't go down without a fight, and there would be casualties on both sides. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like we were moving forward. Like we had a purpose beyond just survival. Like maybe, just maybe, we could turn this tragedy into something that mattered. As I fell asleep in Asher's arms that night, the bond humming contentedly between us, I made myself a promise I would honor my father's final wish. I would be the person he should have been. And I would make damn sure that no other daughter had to discover her father was a monster. Chapter 9. The Werewolf Council convened 3 days later in a warehouse outside Portland. I'd expected something more formal. A courthouse, maybe, or some kind of official building. Instead, we met in what looked like an abandoned industrial space, concrete floors and exposed steel beams creating an atmosphere more suited to underground fight clubs than supernatural politics. But as alphas from packs across the Pacific Northwest filed in, I began to understand. This wasn't about human conventions. This was about werewolf law, and werewolf law was primal, direct, and brutal. There were 12 alphas in total, representing the major packs in the region. I recognized Reese, who'd spoken on our behalf after Blackwood's death. The others were strangers. Men and women who radiated power and danger in equal measure, whose eyes tracked me with the predatory focus I'd grown accustomed to. I was the only human in the room, and I was acutely aware of it. "This is highly irregular," said an older alpha, his silver hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. "Bringing a human to council proceedings, even a claimed mate. Nora Kane has evidence relevant to our investigation," Reese said firmly. "Evidence that affects all our packs. She has the right to present it. She's the daughter of a hunter." This from a female alpha with scars running down one side of her face. "How do we know this isn't a trap?" "Because I'm standing right here," I said, forcing my voice steady despite the weight of 12 predatory gazes. "Because I helped clear Asher Thorne's name. And because my father's journal contains information about Hunters Guild operations that could save your pack members from the same fate that befell the Thorns." The scarred alpha's eyes narrowed. Bold words from someone who carries hunter blood. "Judge me by my actions, not my bloodline." I met her stare, refusing to look away, even though every instinct screamed at me to submit. I chose to stand with werewolves. I chose to accept the claiming bite. I chose to expose the guild's operations, even though it means destroying my father's legacy. Those were my choices, not his. A ripple of respect moved through the assembled alphas. The scarred woman nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Let's see this evidence." Asher and I spent the next 2 hours presenting everything we'd found. My father's journal with its detailed accounts of guild operations. The financial records showing payments from Blackwood to the guild. The letter terminating my father's contract. And most damning, a list of other accidents and rogue attacks that matched the guild's patterns. The council chamber grew progressively quieter as we spoke. By the time we finished, the alphas were exchanging grim looks. 12 packs, said Reese quietly, studying the list. 12 packs eliminated or severely damaged in the last 20 years, all by what we thought were isolated incidents. If the Guild was behind all of these, then we've been at war for 2 decades without knowing it. Finished the silver-haired alpha. The question is why? What does the Guild gain from systematically weakening werewolf packs? Control, I said. According to my father's notes, most of their contracts come from rival alphas willing to pay for deniability, like Blackwood. But there's also evidence of contracts from human organizations, military contractors, pharmaceutical companies interested in supernatural biology, even government agencies. They're selling us. The scarred alpha snarled. Selling information about us to humans who want to study us, control us, or eliminate us. Not all humans, I said carefully. Most humans don't even know you exist. But there are factions within human society that do know, and they see werewolves as either a threat or a resource. The Guild acts as a bridge between those factions and the supernatural world. This is bigger than we thought, Reese said. This isn't just about avenging the Thorne Pack. This is about the safety of every werewolf in North America. The council dissolved into heated discussion. I watched the alphas argue, their voices rising as they debated courses of action. Some wanted immediate retaliation. Others urged caution. All of them were angry, and in a room full of werewolves, anger was a dangerous thing. Asher's hand found mine under the table, and I felt his steadying presence through the bond. He was tense, ready to defend me if the mood turned violent, but holding back for now. Finally, the silver-haired alpha, who seemed to be the council's de facto leader, called for order. We need more information, he declared. The journal gives us operational details and past contracts, but we need to know the Guild's current operations. Their headquarters, their members, their active contracts. We need intelligence before we can act. I can get that, I said, and felt every eye in the room turn to me. How? Reese asked. My father was a Guild operative for 20 years. His contacts, his methods, his access codes, they're all in his records. And I'm his daughter. His only child, his heir. If I approach them claiming I want to take up his work, complete his unfinished business. They'll kill you on sight? Asher cut in, his voice hard. Absolutely not. We are not using you as bait. It's the fastest way to get inside their organization. I don't care. You're not doing it. His hand tightened on mine almost painfully. Through the bond, I felt his absolute refusal, his terror at the thought of losing me. Asher. No. He stood, pulling me up with him, and addressed the council. We find another way. We use the evidence we have to track the Guild's movements. Identify their operatives through my mate's father's contacts, build a case, and systematically dismantle their network. But we do not send Nora into the Guild's headquarters like a sacrificial lamb. She's already involved, the scarred alpha pointed out. The moment she presented this evidence, she made herself a target. At least if she goes in willingly, we can plan for it. Provide backup. No, Asher repeated, and there was an edge of alpha command in his voice that made several council members tense. She's my mate. Under werewolf law, I have the right to refuse any action that puts her in direct danger. Under werewolf law, she's also Luna of your pack, Reese said quietly, which means she has autonomy to make her own tactical decisions. I don't have a pack. Asher's frustration was palpable. The Thorne Pack is dead. I'm an alpha without followers, without territory. I have no authority here except to protect what's mine. The room went silent. I felt Asher's anguish through the bond. The reminder that he'd lost everything, that his status as alpha was a hollow title now. Then rebuild, I said quietly. He turned to look at me, confusion in his eyes. Rebuild your pack, I continued. There are rogues everywhere. Wolves who lost their packs to the guild's operations, who've been alone and hunted for years. Give them a home. Give them a purpose. Build something new from the ashes of what was destroyed. Nora, you asked me what I wanted. If I wanted to be Luna of a pack, I do. But not just any pack. Yours. A pack built on protecting others, on stopping the guild, on making sure no other family suffers what yours did. I turn to address the council. We'll do both. Asher will rebuild the Thorn pack from rogues and displaced wolves. And I'll use my father's contacts to infiltrate the guild. Together, we'll gather the intelligence you need to shut them down permanently. This is insane, Asher said, but I could feel his resistance cracking through the bond. The idea of rebuilding, of having purpose again, called to something deep in his alpha nature. It's necessary, Reese said, and it might actually work. The guild won't expect a coordinated effort between a rebuilt pack and an inside operative. They're used to werewolves reacting emotionally, violently. This would be strategic. The silver-haired alpha studied us both carefully. Asher Thorne, are you willing to accept the responsibility of rebuilding your pack? To lead again, knowing the dangers it will bring. I felt Asher's internal struggle through the bond. Fear of failing again. Of losing more people he cared about. Warring with the deep need to protect, to lead, to have purpose. Yes, he said finally. On one condition. Name it. Nora doesn't go into the guild alone. We set up communication protocols, extraction plans, backup at every stage. And if at any point I feel through our bond that she's in immediate danger, I pull her out, council approval or not. The council exchanged glances. Finally, the silver-haired alpha nodded. Agreed. We'll provide resources for rebuilding the Thorn pack, territory, funding, introductions to rogues seeking placement, and will support Nora's infiltration with tactical backup and intelligence support. He looked at me seriously. This is dangerous, Miss Kane. The guild has killed for less than what you're planning. Are you certain? I thought about the massacre site. About Sarah, who never got to turn 8. About Asher, tortured by 3 years of grief and madness for crimes he didn't commit. About my father's final letter, asking me to be the person he should have been. I'm certain, I said. Then let's begin. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Asher threw himself into rebuilding the Thorn pack with an intensity that was both impressive and slightly terrifying. The council had granted him territory in the Olympic National Forest, close to where his original pack had lived, but not the same cursed ground. He'd set up a central gathering point, in a clearing surrounded by old-growth forest, and word had spread through the rogue network with supernatural speed. They came in ones and twos at first. A young wolf who'd lost his pack to a suspicious fire. An elderly female whose family had been killed by what was ruled a rogue attack. A mother with 2 cubs, fleeing an abusive alpha. All of them broken, all of them searching for belonging. And Asher gave it to them. I watched him transform over those 2 weeks. The half-feral creature who'd kidnapped me in the forest was gone, replaced by a true alpha, strong, confident, protective. He assessed each potential pack member carefully, listened to their stories, offered them a place if they were willing to fight for something greater than themselves. The Thorn pack was being reborn, not as a replacement for what was lost, but as something new. Something forged in tragedy but built on hope. And I was part of it. As Luna, I found myself with responsibilities I'd never imagined. The pack looked to me for guidance on integrating with human society, on managing the practical aspects of pack life, on mediating disputes with a human perspective. I used my wildlife photography skills to document pack activities, creating visual records that would prove invaluable if we ever needed to defend ourselves legally. But more than that, I found myself genuinely caring about these wolves. Learning their names, their stories, their hopes, building something that felt like family. It would have been perfect, except for what loomed ahead. My infiltration of the Hunters Guild was set for the end of the month. I'd made contact using my father's old codes, claimed I wanted to honor his legacy by completing his unfinished business. The guild had been suspicious but intrigued. Having a Kane on their roster again would restore prestige. They'd lost when they'd been forced to terminate my father. They'd agreed to a meeting. One chance to prove myself worthy of my father's reputation. One chance to get inside and gather the intelligence that could destroy them. "You don't have to do this," Asher said for the 100th time. We were in our cabin, the new one, larger and more comfortable, that served as pack headquarters. "We can find another way." There is no other way. I was packing my bag for the trip to the guild's headquarters in Montana. We need names, locations, active contracts, security protocols. The only way to get that is from inside. The bond. He struggled with the words. If something happens to you, if they hurt you or kill you, it'll break me. I won't survive it, Nora. Not again. Not after finally having something worth living for. I crossed to him, cupping his face in my hands. Through the bond, I could feel his terror, his love, his desperate need to protect me. "I'll be careful," I promised. "And you'll be with me the whole time. Through the bond, you'll feel if something goes wrong. You'll know if I need extraction. It's not enough." His arms came around me, pulling me close. "I should be there with you. I should. You're the alpha. You can't leave the pack, especially not this early. They need you here, keeping them safe. Keeping them together." I rested my head against his chest, listening to his heart beat. "And I need you to trust me. Trust that I can do this. That I'm strong enough." "I know you're strong enough." "That's not the question." He pressed a kiss to my hair. "The question is whether I'm strong enough to let you go into danger while I stay behind." "That's what it means to be alpha," I said gently. "Sometimes you have to let others take the risks. Trust your pack to do their part." He was quiet for a long moment, just holding me. Then, "When did you get so wise about werewolf pack dynamics?" I had a good teacher. I tilted my head up to kiss him and felt the bond flare between us. Love and trust and fear all tangled together. "I'll come back to you, Asher. I promise. You'd better. Because if you don't, I'm declaring war on the Hunters Guild and burning it to the ground." Romantic. I'm a werewolf. We're not known for subtlety. I laughed despite my anxiety and felt some of his tension ease through the bond. This was what we'd become. Partners in every sense, balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses. Facing impossible odds together, even when physically apart. The next morning, I left for Montana with a small bag, my father's journal, and a werewolf mate bond that would either save my life or get us both killed. Chapter 10. The Hunters Guild headquarters was not what I expected. I'd imagined something gothic and sinister. A compound hidden in the mountains, perhaps, or an underground bunker bristling with weapons. Instead, I found myself standing in front of a tasteful corporate office, building in Missoula, Montana, the kind of place that could house insurance adjusters or real estate developers. The brass plaque beside the door read, Apex Conservation Society, Wildlife Management Solutions. Of course, they'd hidden in plain sight, disguised as an environmental organization. It was brilliant and disturbing in equal measure. I checked my phone one last time. A text from Asher, "I feel you. Anxious but determined. Be safe. I love you." I typed back, "Love you too. Going dark now." Then I powered off the phone, tucked it into my bag. and walked through the door. The lobby was aggressively normal. Bland corporate art on the walls, a receptionist behind a sleek desk, the faint smell of coffee from somewhere deeper in the building. The woman who greeted me was in her 50s, professional, with sharp eyes that assessed me with unsettling thoroughness. "Ms. Kane, we've been expecting you." "I'm Margaret Chen, operations manager." She extended a hand and I shook it, noting the caluses that spoke of weapon handling. "Your father spoke of you often. He was quite proud." The lie sat bitter on my tongue, but I forced a smile. "Thank you. I only wish I'd known about his real work while he was alive. I would have joined him sooner." "Yes, well, security protocols." Margaret gestured toward a hallway. "If you'll follow me, Director Hale is eager to meet you." As we walked through the building, I cataloged everything I saw with the observational skills my father had ironically taught me. Security cameras at every junction, K-card access panels, staff members who moved with military precision, and underneath the corporate veneer, hints of the building's true purpose. Reinforced doors, silver fixtures, the faint smell of gun oil and wolfsbane. This was absolutely a hunter headquarters. Margaret led me to a conference room on the 3rd floor. The man waiting inside was in his 60s, distinguished, with steel, gray hair, and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He rose as I entered, extending his hand. "Director Richard Hale, your father was one of our finest operatives, Miss Kane. His loss was unexpected." I kept my voice level. "I was told it was an accident." "Of course. A terrible tragedy." Hale's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." I sat across from him, Margaret taking a position by the door. Through the bond, I felt Asher's presence like a warm weight in my chest. Distant but there, anchoring me. "You contacted us claiming you wanted to complete your father's work." Hale continued. "That's admirable, but the Guild doesn't accept operatives based on lineage alone." "Why should we trust you?" "Because I know what you're really fighting." I pulled out my father's journal. A calculated risk, but necessary. My father kept detailed records. I've spent the last month studying them, learning about werewolf pack structures, territorial behaviors, vulnerabilities. I know how he tracked them, how he studied them, how he eliminated them, and I want to continue that work. Hale's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because they killed my father." The lie came easily, built on a foundation of truth. "Oh, you ruled it an accident. But I've read his final entries. He was being watched, followed, and 3 days after the Thorne Pack operation went sideways, he conveniently fell off a cliff." I let anger color my voice. "I'm not stupid, Director. I know what happened. The question is whether you're going to admit it." A long silence. Hale and Margaret exchanged glances. "Your father became a liability," Hale said finally. "He let a target survive. Worse, he began to question the mission. That kind of doubt is contagious, dangerous to our operations. The decision was made to retire him. Permanently. The casual admission of my father's murder should have shocked me. Instead, I felt only cold fury. "I understand," I said, forcing my voice steady. "He went soft, made mistakes. But I won't. I want to finish what he started. I want the Thorne Pack completely eliminated, the Alpha specifically. He's rebuilding, gathering rogues. He's a threat. We're aware." Hale leaned back in his chair. "We've been monitoring Asher Thorne since Blackwood's unfortunate demise. Quite the comeback story, from feral rogue to Alpha rebuilding his pack. Impressive? Then you know he needs to be stopped before he becomes too powerful." "Indeed. Which is why we've already accepted a contract on the new Thorne Pack." Hale pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. 40, 3 members and growing. offered by Alpha Victor Strand of the Cascade Pack. He's concerned about Thorne's growing influence in the region. The contract is for complete pack elimination, staged to look like a territorial dispute. My blood ran cold. I opened the folder with hands that I forced not to shake. Inside were surveillance photos of the pack. My pack. There was Sarah's mother with her cubs, the elderly female who'd lost her family, the young male who'd been so eager to prove himself. And there, in the center of a group photo, were Asher and me. When? I managed to ask. 2 weeks. We're assembling the team now. Hale watched me carefully. Your timing is fortuitous, Miss Kane. If you want to prove yourself worthy of your father's legacy, this is your opportunity. You'll be part of the strike team. We'll provide training, equipment, everything you need. And when it's done, when Asher Thorne is dead and his pack scattered, you'll be a full guild operative. Through the bond, I felt Asher's sudden spike of alarm. He could sense my terror, my rage, even across the distance separating us. I forced myself to calm, to breathe, to not give anything away. I'm honored, I said, but I'll need time to prepare. Learn your protocols, train with the team. Of course. Margaret will oversee your training. Hale stood, apparently satisfied. Welcome to the Hunters Guild, Miss Kane. Your father would be proud. I somehow made it through the rest of the meeting, through the tour of the facility, through the introduction to other operatives, men and women who smiled and shook my hand while discussing the most efficient ways to kill werewolves. I saw their armory silver bullets of every caliber, wolfspan grenades, specialized tranquilizer darts, their intelligence room maps of werewolf territories across North America, files on every major pack, surveillance equipment that could track supernatural beings with frightening precision. And I saw their trophy room. Mounted on the walls were pelts from shifted werewolves, preserved in death. Claws and fangs displayed like hunting trophies. Photographs of successful operations. Massacres, really, with proud hunters posing beside the bodies. I recognized one photo immediately. My father, 20 years younger, standing in a clearing filled with bodies. His expression was triumphant. I excused myself to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. That night, in the Spartan quarters they'd assigned me, I risked turning on my phone for 60 seconds. 23 missed calls from Asher. Texts ranging from concerned to frantic. I typed quickly safe. Inside. Contract on pack in 2 weeks. Need extraction now. Location Apex Conservation Society, Missoula. Come tonight. Then I powered off again and waited. Through the bond, I felt Asher's response. A surge of relief followed by cold, focused rage. He was coming. The pack was coming. I just had to survive until they got here. At 2 a.m., I heard the first explosions. The building's alarms screamed to life. I grabbed my bag and ran for the hallway, following the panicked stream of guild operatives toward the emergency exits. But instead of fleeing outside, I ducked into a stairwell and headed up, toward the intelligence room on the 5th floor. This was the real objective, the evidence we needed. I could hear fighting below, the sounds of werewolves tearing through guild defenses, the gunfire, the screams. Asher and the pack were providing the distraction I needed. The intelligence room was locked, but my father's access codes, which I'd found in his journal, still worked. Apparently the guild was slow to update their security. I burst into the room and went straight for the computers. No time for fine essay. I plugged in the flash drive I'd brought and started copying everything. Files, photographs, financial records, active contracts, operative identities, everything. The download bar moved with agonizing slowness. 10%. 25%. 40%. I thought you might try something like this. I spun to find Director Hale in the doorway, a gun pointed at my chest. Silver bullets, no doubt. "You're not your father's daughter," he said conversationally. "David would never have betrayed the guild." "So who are you really, Nora Kane?" "I'm exactly who I said I was." His daughter. Who read his journal and learned what kind of monster he really was. I kept one hand on the keyboard, watching the download continue behind me. 65%. 70%. The difference is I chose to be better than him. Noble. Stupid, but noble. Hale's finger tightened on the trigger. "Did you really think you could infiltrate the Hunters Guild? That we wouldn't notice the claimed mate bond mark on your throat? We've been hunting werewolves for centuries, girl. We know what a claiming bite looks like. Then why let me in?" "Because you led us straight to Asher Thorne." His smile was cold. "We've had snipers positioned around this building since you arrived. Silver bullets, blessed and enchanted. The moment your mate arrives to rescue you, he dies. And then we'll use his connection to you to track down every member of his pack and eliminate them systematically." 95%. 98%. 100%. Download complete. I yanked the flash drive free just as the window exploded inward. Asher came through in a shower of glass, fully shifted, massive and terrifying. He hit Hale before the director could fire, and I heard bones snap as the werewolf's jaws closed on the man's arm. The gun clattered to the floor. I grabbed it. "Asher." "No," I screamed as he prepared to deliver the killing blow. "We need him alive. He has information we need." The wolf's golden eyes met mine, and I saw the struggle there, between the need for vengeance and trust in his mate's judgment. Finally, he released Hale's mangled arm and shifted back to human form, naked and covered in blood. "Talk," Asher growled at Hale. "Who else knows about the contract on my pack? How many operations do you have active right now?" "Go to hell, Thorne." Hale clutched his ruined arm, his face pale with pain and fury. I knelt beside him, pressing the barrel of his own gun against his temple. "I've had a really bad month, Director. I've been kidnapped, shot, had my entire worldview shattered, and discovered my father was a mass murderer. I'm not feeling particularly patient. So you have exactly 5 seconds to start talking before I pull this trigger." Asher looked at me with something like pride and concern mixed together. 5, 4, 3, wait. Hale's composure cracked. "Wait. There are 12 active contracts right now. 12 packs marked for elimination. The files are in the database you just copied. Operative identities, client names, everything. Who else knows about this facility? Everyone. Every operative, every client. We're not hiding. We're an institution. You can't stop us by burning down one building. Maybe not." I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and held it up. "But we can expose you. Every contract, every murder, every client who hired you. It's all going to the Werewolf Council, to human law enforcement, to every media outlet that will listen. By tomorrow, the whole world will know about the Hunters Guild. You'll start a war," Hale said. "Humans will panic. They'll hunt werewolves openly. Everything we've done to maintain the balance." "You mean everything you've done to profit from murder, while pretending it's necessary?" Asher's voice was hard. "That ends tonight. Through the bond." I felt him reaching out to the pack. They'd secured the building, were gathering survivors and evidence. No guild operative would escape tonight. "Nora." Reese appeared in the doorway, shifted back to human. Someone's jacket wrapped around her. "We've got them all. 23 operatives in custody, plus files, weapons, everything. The council is on their way. This is going to work." I looked around the intelligence room, at the maps marking werewolf territories, at the files documenting decades of sanctioned murder, at the evidence that would finally bring the guild down. My father spent 20 years building this, I said quietly. 20 years killing innocent people for money and lies. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows the truth. Asher's hand found mine, and through the bond, I felt his love, his respect, his unwavering support. Together, he said. Together, I agreed. Director Hale laughed bitterly. You think this changes anything? The guild has been operating for over a century. We have operatives embedded everywhere, clients in every major pack. Resources you can't imagine. You've won a battle, not the war. Then we'll fight the war, Asher said simply. Every day, every battle, until you're finished. Because that's what it means to be a pack. To protect each other, to fight for each other, to never stop until justice is done. As the Werewolf Council arrived and began taking guild operatives into custody, as evidence was catalogued and charges were prepared, I held on to Asher and felt the bond between us stronger than ever. We'd done it. We'd exposed the conspiracy, gathered the evidence, struck a blow against an organization that had operated with impunity for generations. But Hale was right. This was just the beginning. The real war was still ahead. Chapter 11. 3 weeks later, we stood before the largest gathering of werewolves I'd ever seen. The amphitheater in the Cascade Mountains had been built generations ago for exactly this purpose: werewolf trials and councils. Carved into living rock, it could seat over 500 wolves, and tonight, it was full. Every major pack in North America had sent representatives. Some had come out of curiosity. Others sought justice for their own losses to the guild. And some, like Alpha Victor Strand, who'd placed the contract on Asher's rebuilt pack, had come because they'd been summoned to answer for their crimes. I stood beside Asher in the center of the amphitheater, very aware that I was the only human in a sea of predators. The claiming bite on my throat marked me as Pack, as Luna, but I could still feel the weight of hundreds of golden eyes assessing me, judging me, wondering if I was worthy, nervous. Asher murmured, his hand finding mine. Terrified, I admitted, but ready. The Elder Council, 5 of the oldest and most powerful alphas in North America, sat in elevated positions surrounding the amphitheater. The silver-haired alpha from Portland was there, looking grave and ancient in equal measure. He stood, and the crowd fell silent. We are gathered tonight to address crimes against our people. Crimes that have gone unnoticed for too long, hidden beneath lies and false narratives. His voice carried across the space without microphone or amplification. Pure alpha command. Asher Thorne and his mate, Nora Kane, have brought us evidence of a conspiracy that reaches to the highest levels of our society. Evidence that some among us have betrayed our laws, our people, and our very existence by hiring human hunters to eliminate rival packs. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Denial, anger, fear. I could taste it all in the air. Will hear the evidence, the elder continued. And then we will render judgment. Reese stepped forward first, presenting her testimony about Blackwood's confession before his death. Then came other survivors. Wolves who'd lost packs to suspicious accidents, who'd always suspected but never had proof. And then it was my turn. I walked to the center of the amphitheater, acutely aware of every eye on me. Through the bond, I felt Asher's steady presence, his absolute faith in me. My name is Nora Kane. I began, my voice smaller than I wanted but growing stronger. My father was David Kane, a Hunters Guild operative for 20 years. He led the team that massacred the Thorne Pack. And before he died, before the Guild killed him to silence him, he documented everything. I held up the flash drive. This contains evidence of 12 active contracts against werewolf packs. Financial records showing which alphas paid for hits on their rivals. Operative identities and locations. Strategic documents outlining the guild's long-term goals, which include not just eliminating individual packs, but destabilizing werewolf society to make you easier to control and exploit. The crowd erupted into chaos. Wolves shouting, some in denial, some in rage. The elders called for order, but it took several minutes for calm to be restored. "You expect us to believe a human?" Someone shouted from the crowd. "The daughter of a hunter, who stands here wearing a claiming bite and tells us our own alphas are traitors." "I expect you to look at the evidence," I shot back. "Every contract is documented, every payment traced, every conversation between guild operatives and their werewolf clients recorded. The truth is here, whether you want to believe it or not. Bring forth the accused." The silver-haired elder commanded. Alpha Victor Strand was escorted to the center. A powerful wolf in his 50s, leader of one of the largest packs in the Pacific Northwest. He'd come willingly, confident in his political connections. His power base. That confidence evaporated when they played the recordings. His voice, clear and unmistakable, negotiating with Guild Director Hale. Agreeing to pay 750 salozanos for the elimination of the rebuilt Thorne pack. Discussing timing, methods, acceptable collateral damage. "You would hire humans to kill our kind?" The elder's voice was ice. "Humans who've sworn to eradicate us. Who've murdered countless packs over generations?" "I did what was necessary." Strand's composure cracked. Thorne was gathering rogues, building power, threatening the territorial balance. Someone had to stop him before he became strong enough to challenge you, Asher said quietly. Before his pack offered an alternative to wolves tired of your tyranny. "I am Alpha!" Strand roared, his eyes flashing gold. "I have the right to protect my territory by any means necessary." "You have the right to challenge rivals through werewolf law," the elder corrected. "Combat, negotiation, council mediation. You do not have the right to hire human hunters to commit genocide. You do not have the right to endanger our entire species for personal gain." "There are others." Strand's desperation was palpable now. "Other alphas who've used the guild. I'm not the only one. If you execute me, you have to execute all of them. And how many packs can you destroy before werewolf society collapses?" The elder's expression didn't change. "Name them." What followed was devastating. As Strand named names, trying to drag others down with him, the evidence on the flash drive confirmed his claims. 7 alphas in total had placed contracts with the guild over the last decade. Some for rival packs, some for internal dissidents, one for his own beta who'd challenged his authority. 7 alphas who'd betrayed every law werewolf society held sacred. This council finds the accused guilty of crimes against our people, the silver-haired elder declared. The sentence is death, to be carried out immediately. "Wait." Asher's voice cut through the amphitheater. "I have a request." The elder looked at him with ancient, knowing eyes. "Speak, Asher Thorne." "Victor Strand placed a contract on my pack, on my mate. He would have murdered 3 innocent wolves to secure his power." Asher's hand tightened on mine. "By werewolf law, I have the right to challenge him, to face him in combat for the insult to my pack and my mate." A ripple of anticipation moved through the crowd. This was the old way. Justice through combat, alpha against alpha. "Do you accept this challenge?" the elder asked Strand. The older alpha looked at Asher, saw the barely contained fury, the 3 years of grief and madness transformed into cold, focused rage. Saw his own death in those golden eyes. "I accept," Strand said, because refusing would be admitting cowardice. They cleared the center of the amphitheater. No weapons. No interference. Just 2 alphas in a fight to the death. I wanted to look away. Wanted to close my eyes and not watch as Asher put himself in danger again. But through the bond, felt his need for me to bear witness, to see him reclaim his honor, his pack, his right to lead. So I watched. The fight was brutal and ancient. Two wolves in their prime, fighting with everything they had. Strand was older, more experienced, and fighting with the desperation of someone who knew death waited on the other side of defeat. But Asher was fighting for more than survival. He was fighting for his massacred pack, for his mate, for every wolf who'd suffered at the hands of alphas like Strand. He was fighting for justice. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. When it ended, Strand lay broken at Asher's feet, and my mate stood victorious, covered in blood, his eyes blazing gold with alpha power. The challenge is complete, the elder declared. Asher Thorne is victorious. Victor Strand is dead. And the Thorne pack is recognized as a sanctioned pack under council protection. Asher shifted back to human form, and someone threw him a robe. He walked to me through the silent amphitheater, and I met him halfway, uncaring of the blood, the audience, anything but being close to him. "It's over," he said against my hair. "It's really over." Not quite. I pulled back to look at him. There are still 6 more guilty alphas. Still guild operatives out there. Still work to do, he finished. I know. But tonight, we won. We exposed them. We started the process of bringing them to justice. We proved that we're stronger together than they ever expected. Around us, the council continued its work, calling forth the other guilty alphas, presenting evidence, rendering judgment. It would take all night. Maybe longer. Some would flee. Some would face justice with whatever dignity they could muster. But the conspiracy was broken. The Hunters Guild's relationship with Werewolf Society was exposed and condemned. And for the first time in over a century, there was hope that things could change. Nora Kane, the silver-haired elder's voice called my attention. "You have served Werewolf Society well tonight. More than that, you have proven yourself worthy of the title of Luna. On behalf of this council, I thank you." I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to respond to praise from a being who'd lived longer than my country had existed. So I just nodded, feeling Asher's pride through the bond. "And Asher Thorne," the elder continued, "you have reclaimed your honor, your pack, and your place among us. The Thorne pack is recognized. May you lead wisely and well." "I'll do my best," Asher said simply. As the proceedings continued, we slipped away from the amphitheater, finding a quiet spot under the stars where we could just be. Not Alpha and Luna, not investigators or witnesses, just Asher and Nora. "I never thanked you," he said quietly, "for everything. For believing in me when everyone else thought I was a monster. For risking your life to infiltrate the guild. For accepting the mate bond, even though I kidnapped you and dragged you into hell. You don't need to thank me for loving you," I said. "That was my choice. Just like staying was my choice. Just like building a pack with you was my choice. Still, I want you to know that you saved me. Not just from being executed as a rogue, you saved me from myself. From the madness and grief and self-hatred. You gave me a reason to fight my way back to sanity. A reason to live again." I cupped his face in my hands, looking into those golden eyes that had once terrified me and now felt like home. "You saved me too," I told him. "From a life of loneliness and walls and never letting anyone close. From being my father's daughter, defined by his legacy. You gave me a purpose, a family, a place where I belong. So I think we're even." His laugh was soft and full of love. Even. I liked that. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promise. And through the bond, I felt everything he couldn't put into words. His love, his gratitude, his absolute commitment to building a life with me. When we finally pulled apart, the stars were bright above us, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear our pack, wolves howling their victory to the moon. "Come on," Asher said, taking my hand. "Let's go home. Our pack is waiting." And together, we walked back toward the amphitheater, toward our pack, toward the future we'd fought so hard to claim. Chapter 12. 2 months later. The morning sun filtered through the trees, painting the new thorn-packed territory in shades of gold and green. I stood on the porch of our cabin, the Alpha's residence, larger than the others but still modest, and watched the pack begin their day. Sarah's mother was teaching her cubs to hunt in the clearing below, their playful yips carrying on the breeze. The elderly female, whose name was Margaret, sat with 2 younger wolves, sharing stories of pack history, building new traditions from the ashes of the old. And there, near the tree line, Asher worked with the latest arrivals, 3 rogues who'd heard about the pack that welcomed the broken and displaced. 43 members had grown to 62, and more came every week. The Thorn pack was thriving. "You're smiling," Reese said, joining me on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee. She'd become our liaison to the council, visiting regularly to check on our progress and coordinate efforts against the remaining guild operations. I have reasons to smile. I accepted the coffee gratefully. How did the council session go? 3 more guilty alphas in custody. The Cascade Pack territory has been redistributed to smaller packs who lost members to the guild. And Director Hale is cooperating. Gave us locations of 5 more guild facilities in exchange for leniency. Leniency. My voice hardened. He ordered the deaths of hundreds of werewolves. He's getting life in a supernatural prison instead of execution. Trust me, it's not mercy. Reese took a sip of her coffee, and his testimony is helping us dismantle the entire guild network. We've shut down 8 facilities, arrested over 40 operatives, and freed 6 packs that were being actively hunted. 6 packs. Dozens of lives saved, because we'd exposed the conspiracy. It should have felt like victory, but all I could think about was the ones we couldn't save. The packs eliminated before we'd known the truth. "You can't save everyone," Reese said gently, reading my expression. "But you saved a lot of people, Nora. Never forget that." Movement below caught my eye. Asher had spotted me and was making his way up the hill. Even after 2 months, the sight of him still made my heart race. He'd gained weight, filled out his frame with muscle instead of starvation. His eyes were clear, focused, with only occasional flickers of gold instead of the constant madness that had marked him before. He looked healthy. Whole, happy. "I'll leave you 2 alone," Reese said with a knowing smile. "Council wants a full report by next week, but I think you've earned some time off." She shifted smoothly and loped away into the forest, leaving me alone as Asher climbed the porch steps. "Good morning, Luna," he said, pulling me into his arms for a kiss that made my toes curl. "Good morning, Alpha," I replied when we came up for air. "How are the new recruits?" "Traumatized but healing. Jason lost his entire family to a guild hit 3 months ago. He's the only survivor. The twins, Emma and Ethan, were sold to a research facility by their old Alpha. Took us 2 weeks to extract them." His expression darkened. "There's so much damage out there, Nora. So many wolves who've been hurt by the guild, or by alphas like Blackwood and Strand. Then we keep helping them. We keep building something better." I rested my head against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. "One wolf at a time." "One wolf at a time," he agreed. Then, carefully, "There's something I want to show you. If you're ready." I knew immediately what he meant. We'd been avoiding it for 2 months, but it was time. "I'm ready," I said. We hiked through the forest in comfortable silence, the bond humming contentedly between us. Other pack members called greetings as we passed. Asher had insisted that the pack be spread throughout the territory rather than centralized, giving everyone space while maintaining community. It was working beautifully. After an hour, we reached a clearing I'd never seen before. It was beautiful. A natural amphitheater surrounded by old-growth forest, with a small stream running along one edge. Wildflowers carpeted the ground in brilliant colors, and in the center, Asher had built something that made my breath catch. A memorial, 47 stones, each carved with a name and carefully placed in a spiral pattern. In the center, a larger stone bore an inscription. The Thorne pack taken too soon. Never forgotten, may they find peace in the stars and justice in our actions. I wanted to do this right, Asher said quietly. Give them a place to be remembered. A place where we could come and honor who they were, not just how they died. I walked among the stones, reading the names. Sarah Thorne, age 8, Marcus Chen Beta. Elena Chen, his mate. On and on, 40, 7 lives cut short, 40, 7 stories ended before their time. Tell me about them, I said. Not how they died. Who they were. So he did. He told me about Sarah's obsession with catching fireflies, how she'd wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, about Marcus's terrible jokes that made everyone groan but laugh anyway, about Elena's gift for mediating disputes, her gentle wisdom, about the elderly wolf who'd taught pack history through song, the young couple who'd been planning their mating ceremony, the teenager who'd been learning to control his first shifts. He gave them back their humanity, their lives, their dreams, their importance beyond just being victims. By the time he finished, we were both crying. They would have liked you, Asher said, pulling me close. Sarah especially. She was fearless and curious and always asking questions. You would have gotten along perfectly. I wish I could have met them. And I meant it. These weren't just names anymore. They were people who'd been loved, who'd mattered, who deserved so much better than what they got. There's one more stone, Asher said, leading me to a marker set slightly apart from the others. David Kane Hunter. Father. Flawed man. May he find the redemption he sought. I stared at my father's memorial stone, emotions warring in my chest. Grief for the father I'd thought I knew. Rage at the man he'd actually been. And something more complicated. Pity, maybe, for someone who'd realized his mistakes too late to make amends. You didn't have to do this, I said. Yes, I did. For you. Asher's arm tightened around my waist. Your father was a monster who did terrible things. But he was also your father, and you loved him, and at the end, he tried to do the right thing. That deserves acknowledgement, even if it doesn't earn forgiveness. I don't know if I can forgive him. You don't have to. Forgiveness isn't mandatory, but you can remember him honestly, the good and the bad. And you can choose to be better than he was. Which you already have, 1,000 times over. I leaned into my mate's warmth and let myself grieve. For the father I'd lost, for the pack that had been destroyed, for all the pain that had brought us to this moment. But I also let myself feel hope. Because standing here in this memorial garden, surrounded by names and stories and love, I realized something important. We hadn't let the darkness win. That evening, the pack gathered for our weekly community meal, a tradition I'd instituted to build bonds and create family. Long tables were set up in the central clearing, laden with food that pack members had contributed. Laughter and conversation filled the air, the sound of people who felt safe enough to be joyful. I watched from my seat beside Asher as the cubs played tag between the tables, as the adults swapped stories and jokes, as new members were welcomed with warmth and acceptance. This was what we'd built. This was what we'd fought for. You look proud, Asher murmured in my ear. I am proud. Look at them, Asher. 2 months ago, most of these wolves were alone, traumatized, convinced they'd never have a pack again. And now they're family. He pressed a kiss to my temple. You did that. You showed them what a pack could be, when it's built on trust instead of fear. We did it together. Always together, he agreed. Margaret stood up, tapping her glass for attention. Before we eat, I'd like to propose a toast. To Alpha Asher and Luna Nora, who gave us all a second chance. Who proved that even in our darkest moments, there's hope for redemption and healing. To Asher and Nora! The pack caroused, raising their glasses. I felt tears prick my eyes again, happy tears this time. Through the bond, I felt Asher's overwhelming love and pride, his deep contentment with the life we'd built. There's one more thing, Asher said, standing. The pack quieted immediately, giving him their full attention. Nora and I have an announcement. Oh God. We'd agreed to wait, but apparently he couldn't keep the secret any longer. We're expecting, he said simply, and the bond flooded with his joy. In about 7 months, the Thorne pack will have its first new member. The clearing erupted into cheers and congratulations. Pack members swarmed us, offering hugs and blessings, and excited questions about names and nursery plans. I'd found out a week ago, had been terrified and thrilled in equal measure. A baby. A child who would grow up surrounded by this family, protected by this pack, loved by parents who'd fought through hell to be together. You couldn't wait until after dinner. I asked Asher, laughing through happy tears. I've waited long enough for good news. Let me enjoy this. He pulled me close, his hand resting protectively over my still, flat stomach. Let us all enjoy this. As the celebration continued around us, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, the massacre site where we'd met, the cabin where I'd been held captive, the investigations, the danger, the moments when death had seemed certain. All of it had led to this, to family, to home, to a future bright with possibility. I love you, I told Asher, loud enough for everyone to hear. I love you and our pack and this life we've built. And I can't wait to see what comes next. I love you too, he replied, my mate, my Luna, my salvation. We kissed to the sound of pack cheers, and through the bond, I felt what he felt. Absolute contentment, fierce protectiveness, and love so deep it defied description. This was our happy ending. Hard won, complicated, built on tragedy and loss and the courage to keep fighting anyway. This was redemption. Epilogue. 3 years later, I knelt in the grass with my camera, trying to capture the perfect shot. The lighting was ideal. Early morning sun streaming through the trees, mist rising from the stream, everything bathed in golden light. Mama, look, a small voice called out, and I turned to see my daughter balanced precariously on a fallen log, her dark hair wild around her face, her amber eyes bright with mischief. Be careful, Elena. I called back, named for the pack member who'd never gotten to have children of her own. Don't shift yet. You promised to wait until after photos. But I want to show Daddy my wolf. Show me what? Asher emerged from the tree line with our son, 2-year-old Marcus, perched on his shoulders. Both of them were grinning, clearly having snuck off for an early morning adventure. Elena wants to shift before her birthday, I said, giving my daughter a stern look that made her giggle. Even though we agreed she'd wait until the pack ceremony tomorrow. Tomorrow's forever away. Elena complained with the dramatic despair of a 5-year-old. Tomorrow is literally tomorrow, Asher pointed out. But he was smiling. Come here, little wolf. Let your mama take her pictures, and then we'll practice your shift in the clearing. Elena shrieked with joy and launched herself at her father, who caught her easily despite still holding Marcus. The sight of my family, my impossible, wonderful family, made my heart swell. "One more shot," I said, raising my camera. "Everyone together. Perfect. Now smile." "No, Marcus, we don't eat flowers." "There we go." The shutter clicked, capturing a moment of pure happiness. Asher laughing, both children clinging to him, the forest around us alive with morning light. It was perfect. National Geographic called. I mentioned as we started back toward the pack houses. They want to do a feature on wolf conservation and pack behavior. I told them we'd think about it, using our pack as subjects. Asher raised an eyebrow. Using me as a photographer documenting wolves in the wild. They don't need to know the wolves are werewolves. I grinned. It could be good publicity for supernatural human relations. Show people that wolves aren't the monsters they think. As long as you're not doing anything dangerous. Remember what happened last time you went on assignment. I got kidnapped by a rogue alpha who turned out to be my mate. I remember. I stood on tiptoe to kiss him. Lightning doesn't strike twice. With you. I'm never sure. But he was smiling, and through the bond, I felt his trust, his love, his absolute certainty that we could handle whatever came next. We walked back to pack territory together, our children chattering excitedly about Alina's upcoming shift ceremony. Tomorrow, she'd join the pack officially, would learn to shift and hunt, and take her place in werewolf society. Tomorrow, we'd celebrate another milestone in our family's journey. But today, we had this. Sunshine and laughter and the ordinary magic of being together. The Thorne pack had grown to over 100 members now. We'd become known as the pack that welcomed the broken, the displaced, the wolves who needed a second chance. And we'd continued our work against the Hunters Guild. Now reduced to scattered cells, we systematically hunted down and eliminated. The supernatural world was safer because of what we'd done. Families were whole because we'd fought for them. And every day, I chose this life again. Chose Asher, chose the pack, chose the wild beauty of being Luna to wolves who'd become my family in every way that mattered. Mama. Elena tugged on my hand. Tell me the story again, about how you and Daddy met. I glanced at Asher, who was trying not to laugh. Well, I began, settling both children on my lap as we reached our porch. It's not exactly a fairy tale. More like Beauty and the Beast, but with more kidnapping and less singing furniture. Tell it, Marcus demanded, so I did. I told them about the photographer who'd gone looking for wolves in the forest. About the wounded alpha who'd lost everything and was drowning in darkness. About how sometimes the scariest things turn out to be exactly what you need, and how love can bloom even in the most unlikely circumstances. I told them about redemption and second chances, and the courage to believe in someone when everyone else has given up. I told them the truth, appropriately edited for young ears, about how their parents had found each other in tragedy and built something beautiful from the ruins. And when I finished, both children were asleep in my lap, safe and content and surrounded by family. That never gets old, Asher said softly, gathering our son into his arms while I lifted Elena. Watching you tell our story. It's a good story, I agreed. Terrifying and messy and completely insane, but good. The best stories usually are. We carried our children inside, tucked them into bed, and stood together in the doorway watching them sleep. Through the window, I could see other pack houses, other families settling in for the night. Could hear the sound of wolves running through the forest, free and safe and home. This was what we'd fought for. This was what we'd nearly died for. This was worth everything. Come on, Asher said, taking my hand. Let's sit outside for a while. Watch the stars. We settled on the porch swing, wrapped in blankets, my head on his shoulder and his arm around me. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant overhead. "Do you ever regret it?" Asher asked quietly. "Giving up your human life, your career, your freedom, everything you had before I kidnapped you." I thought about it honestly. Thought about the life I'd been living. Solitary, walled off, going through the motions without really living. Thought about the woman I'd been, comfortable with animals because people were too complicated, too risky. Thought about the woman I'd become, Luna mother, mate, fighter for justice and protector of broken wolves. "No," I said simply. "I don't regret it. You didn't take me away from my life, Asher. You showed me what life could be, and I chose it. I choose it every day, even though I was half feral and half mad when we met. Especially because of that." I tilted my head to look at him. "You showed me your worst, your absolute lowest, most broken self, and trusted me to see the man underneath. How many people get that kind of honesty? That kind of trust? I had no choice. The madness didn't leave room for pretending. Maybe. But you still chose not to kill me. Chose to let me help you. Chose to hope that maybe, just maybe, you weren't the monster everyone thought you were." I pressed my hand over his heart. That took courage. And it gave me the courage to open up too, to let someone past my walls, to risk being hurt. I would never hurt you. I know. But I didn't know that at first. I took a chance on you anyway. And it was the best decision I ever made. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the forest, wolves howled, our pack singing to the moon. "I found something today," Asher said eventually. "While I was out with Marcus, in the memorial garden." He pulled a small object from his pocket, a firefly, carved from wood with painstaking detail, the kind of craft project a child might make. "It was on Sarah's stone," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Someone in the pack made it and left it there. They're remembering her, honoring her. She's not forgotten." Tears stung my eyes. They'll never be forgotten. The pack we lost. They live on in the pack we've built. In the children we're raising. In every wolf we save from the guild. Sarah would have loved Alina. Asher smiled through his tears. They would have gotten into so much trouble together. The best kind of trouble. We held each other as the night deepened, as our pack settled into sleep, as the world turned beneath us. And I felt, through the bond and through the life we'd built, something that had once seemed impossible, complete and utter peace. I'd come into the forest looking for wolves and found so much more. Found family, purpose, belonging. Found a love that had survived kidnapping and conspiracy and war. Found a home in the arms of a man who'd been lost in darkness and chosen to fight his way back to the light. Found myself, finally, after 28 years of hiding behind walls and cameras and the safe distance of observation. "I love you, Asher Thorne," I whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for being my monster, my mate, my home." "I love you too, Nora Kane, Thorne," he replied. "Thank you for saving me, for believing in me, for giving me a reason to be better than the worst thing that ever happened to me." We kissed under the stars, and through the bond our souls sang in harmony. Two broken pieces made whole, darkness transformed to light, tragedy rewritten as triumph. This was our story, our truth, our happily ever after, and it was perfect. Author's note. Thank you for listening to Nora's and Asher's story. It was an absolute pleasure writing this one. Please consider subscribing to my channel, as it really helps me bring you more stories, and a like is the best compliment you can give. May you find your own pack, your own home, your own happily ever after, however unlikely the circumstances. See you in the next story. With love, Freya.